Well, hello, boys and girls. It's when we feel like 8 o'clock. I'm Pearl of Wisdom, and you're listening to my NHL Pearls of Wisdom, the Pearl of Wisdom show, And this is the weekend review edition. As you can see, we have some of the finest in the land right here. We have Pro Joe, Professor Joe Boric over from Sports Fanatic News, and we have Payton from Payton on the radio. Everybody knows Payton. Everybody knows these guys. How's your weekend, guys?
Good. Lots of hockey always makes it better. I watched a lot of AHL this weekend too, so good weekend.
Nice. I got.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Pearl.
No, you go
Oh,
ahead.
thank
Tell
you.
me, Payton.
My weekend was pretty relaxing. I just sat back and relaxed as I got no school this week, so I basically just did nothing and slept. I caught up on some sleeping and watched a little bit of hockey. There was lots of good stuff over the weekend, so it was just relaxing. And I won in my fantasy league this weekend by the slightest little bit of points as Colorado lost yesterday, so that was a huge one for me.
Yeah, the one thing you guys are trying to get me better on these two, sleeping. Not the biggest sleeper right here, but we'll work on it.
Yeah. I'm really big on the sleeping. Yeah, full on there,
I
buddy.
sleep like 4 hours a night.
Yeah, I used to do that. Not anymore. I seem to be able to find no problems catching sleep. I can even catch a nap now every once in a while, which is pretty cool. Okay, this weekend, what I was the theme the theme I wanted to get into before we get into the games that happened this weekend, with all of the stuff that's happening in the last little while, with some of the trades that have happened, with Dubois and Laine especially. Some of the things we've been talking about with Minnesota, or not Minnesota, with Pittsburgh, with Malkin, say for instance, there's talk about whole kinds of stuff going on ever since they changed management and all that.
Hmm.
What I would like to ask you guys before we get going is what is your view on loyalty between a player and an organization towards a player? So I'm going to start with Joe here. How loyal, or what does it mean? Like, for instance, with what happened with Laine and Dubois in that situation, do you think there is a breach of loyalty as far as the team is concerned, or as say Dubois or Laine was concerned there? How loyal now should players be to their teams?
I think it's different for each. I think Dubois was less loyal to Columbus than Columbus was actually trying to be loyal to Dubois. I think with Line and Roslovich, it was the exact opposite. They were just saying, you ain't working with us, so we ain't working with you. And that's pretty much that. It was, you ain't working with us, we're not working with you, get us the heck out of here. And that ended up working out. I mean, Roslovich, Patrick Sharp's been talking about it every single time he's been on television since he got traded to Columbus. He's saying how he loves what he's watching. He's the offensive player. He thought, like you said, Pearlo was this guy the whole time. It's just Winnipeg had no idea what the hell they were doing. So I would say it's Winnipeg's fault for those two. That's disloyalty from the team that they just went, screw you all, get me out of here. And it ended up working out good for them. He's doing better, and he got benched once, but Torts even said that was just a thing that they had to learn from bad mouthing a coach that maybe flew in Winnipeg. It didn't fly in, which is also talking about how bad the culture is in Winnipeg. You shouldn't let that fly in Winnipeg, you idiots. But the you have Dubois going back up. His dad works in the organization. He's injured now, unfortunately, but I think he should get going there. He probably should have more loyalty there also because his father works in the organization. So I would think he should definitely be fine there. I think Ruslovich obviously is flourishing already, and Line is looking solid. So it seems like they're going to do well in Columbus as well. So I think it'll work out great for both sides. But I think it was a difference for both. Dubois was less loyal to Columbus than Columbus was to him, where Winnipeg
Hmm.
decided to be stupid and just get rid of one of the best scorers that could be one of the best scorers if he gets his head on straight in our generation with Columbus. And then Ruslovich, you just couldn't figure out. You picked him 26th or something like that, somewhere in the mid 20s, and you just couldn't figure out his career. He's much more offensive than you had in Winnipeg. You kept burying him on the lines, and you kept burying Line A. They might need to get a new coach. I usually have liked him in the past, Maurice, but he stinks there. They might need to get a new coach.
Hmm, that's interesting. Okay, Peyton, what do you think? Where does the loyalty stand here now in this generation and players and all of that? Because I mean, back in the day, and you guys might not remember this, none of this shenanigans, and I don't really call it shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody would call it. I'm using the word shenanigans because it's an old term. I don't necessarily think that players having an ability to have a voice is wrong at all. I think it's great. But do you see any breach of loyalty between the team and the players in, say, that situation? Or go over to Pittsburgh where Malkin, how much loyalty does Malkin have to that organization? How much should, how much loyalty should the organization have towards Malkin?
Yeah, loyalty is always like I guess a tough topic in the NHL because you can either go both ways with it. With the Line and Pierre-Luc Dubois situation, it definitely just Pierre-Luc Dubois wasn't feeling right there in Columbus, and same with Liney. Just Liney wasn't given the proper ice time to go up and play with. Like Shifley, for example, right? He was playing down near the second line when he should have been playing higher up in the lineup. Now, sure, his attitude wasn't always the greatest. And in Pittsburgh, I always see these posts where like teams should stay loyal to like Kane or Taves or Crosby, but sometimes it's best to move from those players. Sometimes you can't always have that era of Crosby for 20 years on. Malkin, he only has 2 years left. Do you think Malkin's really going to stay loyal with the Pittsburgh Penguins, or is he going to dip off to KHL like Datsuk did and like many other Russian players have done in the past, where once they get up near 36, is Malkin just going to dip to the K? I've also been hearing reports and rumors that Marc-Andre Fleury has been kind of in talks with the Pittsburgh Penguins as well, about Fleury heading back there as well. So I don't know if they're going to be bringing back the boys club there to Pittsburgh or whatever. But loyalty is always a tough question because you would love as a fan to see Sidney Crosby in the Pittsburgh Penguins jersey for the rest of your life. But as a hockey fan, sometimes you like to see that little bit of a change. Sometimes you like to think of those scenarios where Crosby would be traded to Colorado or to Vegas or to Edmonton or wherever. You like to see those kind of scenarios. And I wish that we would do that a little bit more, like the NBA. Not as extreme as the NBA, where you see trades left and right and you see big names going all the time. I wouldn't mind seeing that a little bit more. And we've been seeing that with free agency with Pinar and Tavares. They have both went to teams that they wanted to play for. And I think we're going to start seeing that slowly over time where players that are really good players like Panarin and Tavares might want to start playing for teams that they want to play for. So I think you might start seeing that a little bit more, and you might see it as more of a business side, and that's the way that the NHL is. It's a business, but there's also people in that business that want to play for teams that they want to play for.
Yeah, I'm sort of on the fence on this topic myself. The reason why is, I mean, there's something like you. A good example would have been Ryan Smith, right? Being Oilers fans. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
could you find anybody more loyal than that? Even when he left, he was crying, bawling like a baby. Although I sometimes wonder if he didn't bawl like a baby at diaper commercials, but that's besides the point. But
He was a very
he was a
emotional
very
man.
emotional guy, and he was very attached to the organization. And let's face it, he would have stayed with the Oilers to a fault, wouldn't he
Hmm.
have?
Oh yeah, he would
Yeah,
have,
yeah.
and that's with some players. There's a lot of players out there that love the team, and I mean, he was way back in the '90s. He came up, he grew up in the team, and he loved. He fell in love with the organization, and you don't get that very much with some players. You honestly don't get that. Like with Sidney Crosby, he will most likely play in a Pittsburgh Penguins uniform just because of the fact he loves that organization so much. I don't think you'll ever see him leave the team.
So it's funny you brought that up, and I'll pass this over to Joe as well. That was kind of where I was going here, and you almost have to go to it when you talk about Pittsburgh.
Hmm.
That I'm not so sure about that. And this is what I mean to a fault. Ryan Smith would have stayed to the Oilers to a fault, meaning that it wouldn't even matter if he ever won a cup or anything like that. The team could be absolutely horrible. They'd pretty much have to drag him off the ice. Now, in some ways, it's kind of you kind of respect that somebody loves it that much. But on the other side, like a guy like Sidney Crosby, he's so competitive. I think it's possible that the Pittsburgh Penguins rebuild could somehow be damaged so much and not work, where basically he's
Mm-hmm.
looking around going, I'm going nowhere here. Where he might eventually say, okay, it's time to move on. I think it would be like ripping his soul out to a bit, but I think his love for competition would still outweigh the love for the Pittsburgh organization. You see what I mean by that? And I think that might be, I think that's the healthiest way to be, personally. I think that's a healthy thing. Like to hold on to a certain point, but also want this the spirit of competition to overtake your loyalty to an organization eventually, because then
Mm-hmm.
you're being loyal to yourself, right?
Yeah, it's going to depend because we talked about this with Kane, and then obviously Tays ended up having a issue that it's been undisclosed that he's out for. Where we said with the Blackhawks, we thought that it would take a while for those guys to want to leave because of their loyalty to the team, and then they ended up being a great team that is tied at 18 points with three other teams right now. So thank you, Kevin Lankinen. But the Blackhawks are a team that we thought would do that. We don't know with Pittsburgh if they bring Fleury back. Like Payton said, Fleury might carry the team to being the last playoff spot. Like we didn't think Chicago was going to compete. Chicago's sure as heck ain't as good as Pittsburgh. So they have a better star-based roster with all, especially all the injuries Chicago has this year in Pittsburgh than they do in Chicago. Chicago has Kane and then DeBrincat, and then you have Pittsburgh. You got Letang. You got whenever Malkin gets his head out of his butt. You got Malkin. You got Crosby back in Flurry. He's still a star. He's performing like a star. So it's going to depend what they do. I also heard Gibson because Berkey has connections in Anaheim. And some people are saying if anyone's going to get Gibson, it's not going to be anybody but Pittsburgh because they don't really want to trade Gibson. They think they'll be able to, especially being in the playoffs right now, make the rebuild a little bit quicker than outside people say. So if that's the case, you probably don't want to trade Gibson. But if Pittsburgh gives you their heart and soul for John Gibson, then you might look at that. So it's going to depend. It's just I feel like for Gibson, you would almost have to give a star too because your prospect pool stinks.
It would
Unless
be
like the
like
only
it
guy,
would be almost like Getzel and Marino and like a
yeah,
pick, and that's even. I mean, Pittsburgh doesn't have any picks, so it'd be almost near impossible to get John Gibson. But John Gibson would help Pittsburgh tremendously on that fact.
yeah, you could probably give Gensel, Marino, and Poulin if you want to do that, but then you're really screwing over your minors because Poulin's your
Yeah.
only good prospect.
Hmm.
Like more surefire, at least bottom sixer that probably could be a second liner, but you don't know that yet. That's why I wouldn't do that. But we'll have to see what they do.
Yeah,
I think if I was in Pittsburgh's hands, I would honestly just play the team patient. You don't have the prospect pool to really build up your team more. You don't have the picks to go out and trade for big players. Right now, I think the best bet is to either play patient, wait until the team either folds up or if it really excels. And if it folds up, maybe you start looking at trading away a Chris Letang. Maybe you even start talking with Malkin. Maybe he wants to go to maybe more of a contender. You start asking around the organization, maybe talking with some players and stuff like that to see what they want to do next, right? Because really that's what you're going to be looking at is you're going to be looking towards your captain in that situation, Sidney Crosby, because that's probably what's going to be happening is there's going to be lots of talks between Crosby, Hextall, and Berkey on what's going to be happening next with the Pittsburgh Penguins. What does Crosby kind of is looking for the team? Because when you have an all-star like Crosby on the team, sometimes you're definitely going to be looking at your captain, asking him questions on what he wants to do with the future of that squad. So it's all going to be up to I guess how Berkey and Hextall feel like they need to change the team. If they feel like they need to go after drafting in these next couple of years, even though they don't have very many picks, which is going to be the biggest problem with this team, or do you try to maybe make some moves and maybe you trade away Malkin for a big bundle of NHL ready players or even Chris Letang as well?
Yeah, that's going to be the
Yeah, I
thing.
think.
I have a
Go ahead.
feeling that they're going to be. I mean, the ultimate thing in any owner is they like to use the word retool, right? Where you can just nab
Mhm.
some young players and keep on flying. But I don't know. I think that might be just out of the realm of reality for this organization. Sorry, Joe, to jump on you.
Yeah. No, you're good. I was gonna say what Payton said about going to Crosby. That I would say he might be the biggest guy that a team would do that with, because everybody talks about as soon as this guy retires, he should be a general manager.
Mhm.
So if you have that, you're kind of stupid as Ron Hextall and Brian Burke if you don't go to Crosby, because and Berkey talked about it before himself. So he would really be stupid if he didn't go to Crosby, since he himself said he should be a GM in the past. So I think, like you said, they're definitely going to pay attention to that. And I think Crosby's going to be almost a de facto third, like, president of the team, general manager
Mhm.
now with the strategy you have. So I completely agree with that. I just wanted to back you up on that because Crosby definitely seems like he could be. Hextall might not have a job when Crosby retires. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, who knows? But anyways, I wanted to get to that a little bit, and we probably talk through it as we go through all the games over the weekend. Uh, it's just I think it's really come to a head now, where the NHL is going for loyalty to a player and loyalty between the player and the organization and all of that and what's accepted. Um, it's it's almost I don't want like you said I don't want to see loyalty go away completely, but I am on the same note kind of happy that there's players that aren't stuck in situations that aren't going to be do well for them like they used to be, and that really
Mhm.
was what it used to be. You know, there was a lot of players that you were just there. Look at Marcel Dion. I really think, and I know this is kind of before your time, but you guys are very aware of the situation. Marcel Dion played for the LA Kings his whole career, right?
Yeah.
And that's not right.
Never won a cup.
No,
One of the
he
best players to
shouldn't.
not win a cup.
There's a point where, as an organization, you got to say, you know what, we failed this player. We got to put him somewhere else. But at the time, Marcel Dion said, you know, he was being loyal to the LA Kings and all that kind of stuff like that, and that was kind of the culture. It was actually embedded in the culture, and
Right,
I
like
wish it wasn't.
that's the big thing. Sometimes as a GM, like most of the time, like if you're a GM, you're gonna go up to your superstar and you're gonna ask him like, "Hey, like, how do you feel about this certain situation? Like, we're probably gonna be rebuilding here in the next little bit. Like,
Yeah,
do you want to stay on the team and help
yeah,
grow this team into the next millennium, or do you want to be traded so you could go and win another Stanley
yeah,
Cup? Right, that's going to be up to Malkin because Malkin could even dip off to the K, and we might even see that because I mean we've seen it from multiple Russians from before with Kovalchuk. He left right at his prime of his career. We've seen it before. I don't know if it'll happen, but maybe you get Malkin, you get a big package of prospects because right now going into this draft for the Pittsburgh Penguins, they only have a second, a fifth, and then three seventh round picks.
yeah,
It is a very, very bleak draft for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and especially last year, the last year's draft there, they traded away their first round pick, which ended up being Rodion Amarov, which honestly is looking like a very good prospect, and they could have even used him um, uh, going into their future.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. I think what everyone said, just to sum up this, is the league is changing a bit now, where basketball has always been the players' league. The players get whatever they want. You're not getting anything from us, league. Where hockey has been a lot more oriented towards the league for a while, not
Mm-hmm.
as much towards the players. The Players Association is getting stronger, not weaker as time goes on. The Players Union. So, as much as the league dreads and fears in their boots every time someone says that, it's true. So, deal with it. But Bettman's doing a decent job dealing with it. Other people have to deal with it better. But the league is becoming more of a players' league, and you're going to have to grow and learn with that. GMs that are set in the old ways are not going to be here anymore. If you're
Mm-hmm.
still set in your old ways, you're going to be thrown out the door in about 5 years. I guarantee it. So you have to. That's why Berkey changed. why do you think Brian Burke has become a little bit more loose? Because he knows the way the times are now. He said it on Spitting Chicklets the one time. You can't just be the same for 40 years because everything's changed. So
Yeah.
that's what the league's doing. It's becoming more of a players' league as time goes on, and not as much of just a league's league. And that's probably a benefit for both ends, as much as the league hates to admit it.
I think that was part and parcel to why Pittsburgh picked the two players they did, because or two players, the management team that they did. Hextall is sort of knows both sides too. Hextall is from an old school. Let's face it. I mean, Hextall is from the Bat Street Bullies. You know, like this is he's from two-handed slashes to the ankles if you get him like Crease and Dave Schultz. I mean, you can't get more old school than that, really. And also, but also realizing obviously very well that the league isn't like that anymore, and that and probably for the better in a lot of ways. Hey, John's here. The goat's here. Welcome.
Hey,
Hey, what's up, John?
Sorry. Also, Rain. Nico is here too. Nico, sorry, I didn't. I missed you there, buddy. Welcome. I think he's from Brazil, if I remember correctly.
wow.
Something like that. Yeah. Awesome to have you here.
Also to note, with picking up Ron Hextall when he was with Philly, he was a really good guy for drafting.
Oh
He
yeah.
he
Yeah.
got a lot of guys that built pillars there
Yep.
in Philly with Provorov and
Yep.
Farabee, who's been looking great there, and now even Carter Hart. He's also even a good trader. He's picked up some really good trades over his tenure there in Philly, loading up on picks and always making sure that he was able to win most of the deals that he was to make. And I think that's going to be a big thing for the Pittsburgh Penguins because you had Rutherford who was like throwing picks all over the place to every single team, right? And that's the big thing that Pittsburgh can't sacrifice anymore is drafting. Drafting is such a pivotal thing nowadays, especially building franchises. Even looking at Chicago when they were winning cups up in even Tampa Bay, right? Most of the team is drafting, and I think that's definitely a big thing that the Pittsburgh Penguins got to focus on, especially with Ron Hextall being on the team.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
we
I
we
definitely.
talked about that the last time. And Brian Burke is a great player developer as
Mm-hmm.
well. But you guys brought up a really good point about the fact that they sort of both straddle the old school, new school mentality. Brian Burke was uh, has really grown a lot if you've known him from when his Anaheim days to now. Like he's really changed.
Mm-hmm.
He had a lot of things happen in his personal life. His son, for instance, was suffered through depression. Was gay, and he started a lot of this that's going on in the league into that kind of acceptance and all that kind of stuff like that. So he grew as a person through all of this. And if you see him as he's doing his when he was doing his Sportsnet show, you saw a different character than you did back in
You
those
did.
days, in a totally different character. And again, Hextall as well. Um, the old Hextall, the old mentality was not to draft and develop. The old mentality was drafting was something you did, not something that was the integral part of your organization. The
Mm-hmm.
Detroit Red Wings were the ones that brought that really to the forefront. And Hextall seemed to embrace it right off the bat with the Flyers, like you said. And what I really impressed me with Hextall with the Flyers was, like you said, he got such max value. You said he was good at trading. I found he was good at trading when getting prospects and picks. I don't know if
Yep.
Joe would say he was great at trading when it was player for player as much. Is that right, Joe?
All right, average probably
Average,
player
yeah.
for player, or above average for picks,
But
and
that's the problem with trading player for player. It's just like sometimes you're taking like a big gamble on whether that trade's gonna work out, if that player's gonna fit for your team or not. That's the biggest thing with player for player. Drafting, you kind of get like when you get draft picks, you get not a guarantee, but you get more of a wide length of players that you can look at. Like Perfect example is when they picked up Travis Konecny, right? They moved up a couple picks to pick that guy in the draft, which was absolutely smart idea for them. But there's other moves where you're just looking at them, you're like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big thing with Hexy is he brings in the system. The
Hmm.
Flyers with Holmgren had the worst drafting system in the history of humanity. Like, it was honestly that
Well, I
bad.
don't know. The LA
Like,
Kings
he
of
was
old might have been up there, but yeah,
like
he's right up there for
like
sure.
the dude had no idea how to draft. He didn't know how to trade either. He was absolutely a moron as a general manager. Great guy, great player for the team in the past, but an absolute moron as a general manager. I actually think Clarkey might have been better than Paul Holmgren. That's how much I hate Paul Holmgren as a general manager. But otherwise, great dude. Just terrible at his job when he was the general manager.
Yeah.
But Hextall brought in the system with the analytics and everything, and that stayed. Fletch and Fair have talked about how they kept Hex. They kept using the same type methods. Fair takes more control of the draft, obviously, because Fletch can't focus on everything at once. But they do communicate well. He's been doing well since he came in here. Wisdom was a fourth. Wisdom looks really good. They've been picking well in later rounds. Casa was a fifth in 2015. He might end up doing something like Andre did, at least having a mini career in the league. And he was 2 rounds before him, so he probably should technically, logistically speaking, have a better chance of having a mini career than his brother. But and he also looks better than his brother right now too. So there's also that. But and his brother's injured. So the but I think he's going to do well. You picked late round defenseman. Hogberg was a later guy. He got his first point the other day. They continue to keep picking good in the late rounds, even after people left. Some people like Ross that they picked that I don't think's playing right now, Rowdy Ross, because his team's not at. He might be now, but I don't think his team was active. So they've been picking good no matter where you pick in the rounds. Undrafted, you picked up Zamula and Myers. So he definitely did good there. And then we talked about Chicago with getting people. So obviously they're still doing the same thing. They picked up Pius Suter, one of the best players on the freaking roster, as their undrafted guy this offseason. So they continue to do good things out there when it comes to finding undrafted talent. Kurashev, I think, was a fourth. So they're doing good out there too when it comes to undrafted and late round talent.
Right. Yeah. So it's gonna that'll be interesting to watch. With that in mind, we will go to a couple of the games on Saturday of note. I don't know if we'll be get through all of them because some of them really there's no use talking about. Um, but since we were already talking about some loyalty and specific teams, we will talk about the Jets and the Senators game. Did you guys watch that game by chance Saturday on Saturday?
I watched a bit of it. I watched a little bit of that game. Watched the starting of it, and then I watched a bit of the ending there. And I seen that Kachuk got the big game winning
Yeah.
goal off a tip there, which was nice for there for Ottawa. Finally get a victory after playing some hard style games the past couple ones. They're almost deserving a lot of the victories in the past couple of games. They just haven't been able to finish things off.
Yeah, they've been looking more like the team I thought they would be at the beginning of the year. I was really surprised. Like they were just, I shouldn't have thought of it as surprise though. There was a lot of new pieces there. No training camp, young players, just trying to find their way.
Hmm.
Kudos to because they were already talking about T.J. Smith. What's his name again? The coach. DJ
DJ,
Yeah, I
Smith,
think
yeah.
DJ.
They were already
DJ,
talking about his cutting. They were already asking for his head already. But he's
I think it should be Dorian's head making stupid moves, picking up Stefan, and then Stefan needs to be traded out because
step on, yeah.
he's not really fitting. Oh
Well, it
my
wasn't
lord,
really
what a
that he was
saga
fitting.
that's
I think it
been.
was a lot to do with the fact that he has some family issues back in Arizona and
But as a
stuff like
GM,
that.
wouldn't you look into that as a GM? Like as a GM, wouldn't you look into not trading away first of all your second round pick for a guy that wasn't doing so well
Seemed like a
last year?
super high pick
But not
for
just that,
Stephon, didn't it?
why wouldn't you look into it a bit and be like maybe this guy didn't want to come to Ottawa. Maybe investigate into it a little bit. It was definitely a brain move, and I didn't understand it at first. Now hearing the reports that he wants to be traded out, it definitely doesn't make too much sense for the Ottawa Senators. But honestly, Evgeny Dadonov, I'll give him a little bit of a shout out. He looks, he deserves a bit more goals, definitely. But playing with the Ottawa Sens, you're definitely not going to be able to get as much. But Evgeny Dadonov, if this team was actually good and they had some finishers and they had, of course, they have a lot of young players, so they're still learning to play in the NHL like a Tim Stützle. But Evgeny Dadonov has been able to put up some really good numbers and some really good moves there for the Ottawa Senators. And honestly, this was another game where Ottawa didn't play too terribly bad once again. And there's been a lot of games where Ottawa deserves to win the game, like against Edmonton a couple weeks ago. They deserved to beat us, but Mike Smith absolutely played stellar. And this was another night where Ottawa deserved the victory, and they were able to grease it out and get that big victory for them. And Hogberg as well didn't play too bad. He made a lot of big saves for the team, surprisingly enough, because the way that he's been playing like he's not in even AHL form. He's more like an ECHL goalie for the Ottawa Senators right now. But he was this game was looking a little bit more sharp for the Senators in this game, and was playing a little bit better for them.
Yeah, Joe, did you happen to see this game at all?
Not much other than the fact that Jeff Petrie scored. I saw his
Uh,
highlight because of the fact that for uh, for NHL hockey news, I tend to keep paying attention to Jeff Petrie, so I can always talk him up every time we come on here.
yeah.
So yeah, he seems like right now he will be winning the North since Cal McCarr was out for a while. So there you go, Jeff. You're in my first place slot right now until
Darnell
By the
Nurse.
way, Hot
Cal
Take
moves.
Hockey, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for coming in, all that stuff.
Hey,
Yeah,
bud.
yeah, I know you definitely talk about Petrie a lot. You and HT, whatever, or you and NHL, he's going to win the Norris this year.
Darnell Nurse is a sleeper.
Darnell Nurse is a sleeper, yeah. If he keeps on having a 72% scoring percentage, I don't know what it actually is. It's
Yeah,
got to
yeah,
be right up there, though.
yeah.
Um,
Then he
I
might
watched the
win it.
game, and what I was more looking towards was how Winnipeg was playing. I don't want to take anything away from Ottawa because Ottawa played well, but Winnipeg was skating in mud, pretty much. Didn't it seem like that to you?
Yeah, it did. Watching through the highlights again today, it definitely just looked like, of course, not having Pierre Dubois, so they had to play Vesalainen higher up in the lineup as well, which he made a nice dish off to Scheifele in that game. But yeah, they weren't playing very well defensively, to say the least. There was some really, really good opportunities for the Ottawa Senators where they got some really good opportunities on Halabuik, but Halabuik absolutely. I mean, he's a former Vezina winner. Of course, he's going to save the Winnipeg Jets on majority of these nights. But there was a lot of defensive mistakes, and it does look like they're slipping a little bit on mud. And we'll have to see how well Winnipeg will do against the Edmonton Oilers, who have been looking decently hot in the past couple games. So we'll have to be able to see if they're going to be able to contain that kind of energy in that forecheck from the Edmonton Oilers in tonight's upcoming game.
Yeah, I would say the one other thing I just have to say about the Jets as a whole is I kind of hinted at it already. But I'm thoroughly disappointed in the Jets' performance this season. I think they've been one of the most disappointing teams in the NHL. And I think it has to do with I don't like Paul Maurice in Winnipeg. I've liked him other places he's at. I think he's coaching Winnipeg terribly.
I think so
You
too.
have to run the similar lines. Stop mixing it up like a doofus, and just if because just mixing it up is not like AVs and trots. It doesn't work. Where with those guys, normally it works when they mix. Same with Joe Quinville in Florida. He mixes it up dumbfoundingly stupid, where he'll put somebody from the fourth line on the first line, and I'll be like, no, I understand you might need energy on the second or first line, but that guy should not be the guy up on that line. Like, move
One of
somebody
the
else.
biggest things, one of the biggest topics was when Paul Maurice was asked about Blake Wheeler, because Blake Wheeler lately, he has been horrible defensively. The way that he plays is like a third line scoring forward, practically.
And he's
The way that
usually
he
been
plays
good
defense.
defensively in the
Yeah.
past at
Yeah,
times.
but now
Yeah.
he's still playing up on the first line. You traded away a great offensive talent to Patrick Laine, and now Blake Wheeler is not really there defensively for your team, and you're still playing him up on that top wing. it's not a very good look for your younger players saying that, hey, Blake Wheeler doesn't have to play defense, but you have to. It's definitely not the greatest look. And they need to change things up. And I love Paul Maurice. At some moments in time, I think he's a great coach, but I think it's time to change something up there in Winnipeg. I mean, they definitely need some better defense, but even for how their defense looks, it hasn't been too bad. I've been actually very impressed with how well Forbert was playing for the Jets, especially when he's been playing against the Edmonton Oilers in the past couple games. Forbert plays a very strong game defensively. He's that stereotypical defensive defenseman. He gets right up in front of you. He makes sure that you don't get to that net, and that's the way you got to play. But I do agree that Paul Maurice just he has to figure out that right combo. And Andrew Kopp, I think he was playing up on the first line there with
Yep.
Scheifele and Wheeler. Andrew Kopp was doing a little bit. He was gaining some pretty good momentum at the start of the season. There, he right now has 12 points in 14 games there for the Winnipeg Jets, which is an absolute surprising one for the Winnipeg Jets. But they definitely have to get themselves a little bit going, and this is what I was kind of expecting from the Jets in general. They got off to a very hot start to the season, but I think they're going to start mellowing out, just like how the Montreal Canadiens are doing
Yeah.
as well. Um, because of the fact that Winnipeg played a lot against Ottawa right off the games, and then they also played against the Flames and Vancouver. So they've played against some weaker teams. They're going to be going up in a pretty good stretch. They got to go to Edmonton and then Vancouver and then Montreal. So they're going to have a pretty good stretch of games coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see how if the Jets are a pretender or they're a contender. We'll see how well they do in the next couple of games.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I just
I'm
think
leaning towards pretender myself.
same.
I think they've had a, like you said, they've had a fairly nice schedule to start off with. I mean, they lost to Vancouver, who was really tired, caught them in the like some of the worst part of their schedule, and now they're going to be the ones having the worst worst part of their schedule for the next little while. And
And I think
I
you're
don't
going to
think it's
see
going
that
to.
a lot in the Canadian division.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
And they also took advantage of Ottawa a few times. They
Mm-hmm.
lost, no, they beat them three straight in a row
Yeah.
in January. So I mean that also helps. Obviously, taking advantage of the opponents you should beat, and then in January they won one and lost one against your guys Edmonton Oilers, and then beat Calgary 2 out of 3. So they're taking advantage of the team. Now Calgary's a pretty solid team that they were able to actually competitive team, I should say, that they were able to beat, but um, maybe they'll be the team to surpass them. It'll be interesting to see who the team is that replaces the Jets, because I also do not think the Jets are going to be able to hang on to this lucking out in some games type, like that 3-2 win against Calgary, for example. I didn't think they played the most swimmingly game. They just happened
Mm-hmm.
to win. So, like, you're not going to keep having those things happen. They shouldn't have lost 2-1 to Ottawa. They should have been able to score more and beat on. Like, you're
Yeah, especially
having
against Hogberg.
yeah, especially against
Hogberg
Hopper, who's
has
so playing
been
with ECHL.
terrible.
Yeah.
He's been an ECHL goalie, and he's been practically pelted every time he goes out there. So why wasn't a Blake Wheeler or an Andrew Kopp or a Connor or anyone out on that team? Winnipeg has a very powerful top six. Why weren't they able to go out there and score a couple goals against Hogberg? And I don't know. It's going to be tough. You're going to be seeing a lot of these Canadian division, like if Vancouver starts catching a flame here in these next couple of games, you can see them jump into a playoff spot if Winnipeg continues to fall the way that they are going to fall. You're going to see a lot of different changes up in that Canadian division. It's just going to be, you're going to see like five or so different teams in that playoff spot rotating around.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure.
Yeah, okay. I'm going slowly going to the next game because my computer's. Why? By the way, this Arizona game, I pay for a product that's supposed to have every single game, and I don't see it anywhere on my freaking thing. It's bugging me. Uh, but we'll go to what is really a big game. I had the Islanders to win. This Islanders versus the Bruins. The Islanders were catching the Bruins, I believe, on a 3 games in 4 nights. They were fairly fresh, so I liked them. However, I did have the under, and they screwed that up. But did you guys watch any of that game by chance?
I watched the highlights of it, but I was not able to catch it.
Joe, did
Same,
you just watch the
same
you
thing.
watched the highlights of that game?
Same. I watched the condensed game. Yeah, I thought Pajot continued to look better as time.
Hmm.
He started off slow this year, and now he seems to be looking in the condensed game, at least that I watched, a little bit more active and up on his skates. So that's obviously
Oh,
a great sign. Then
Getting right
Jordan,
to that front of the net as
yeah,
well.
exactly. Then Eberle, who's always been one of my favorite guys to watch, even though he doesn't shoot the puck enough in the
he's
past. But
starting to
this
though,
year he's
isn't
being
he?
aggressive. Yeah, this year he's being more aggressive. And I really like to see that from him
Second in
because he
team in
has a good
shots. So
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has a good shot. It's just he's kind of like reminds me of when Adam Henrique was with the Ducks that they're like, shoot the puck, we have no scores. Shoot, you have a good shot, just shoot. And
yeah.
I feel like that's the same thing Trotz basically said to Everly. We have a lack of snipers on this team. You actually have a pretty good shot when you shoot it. We understand you're a great playmaker, but just shoot the damn puck. And then you see where that has gotten him, and he's also made plays too. So now he has the best of both worlds kind of going, like Henrique had a year or so ago. So I mean, it's a good move by the coaching staff to push your guy to do what he's best at, or better, or also very good at, I should say, as well, and not just one side of the equation. So I think they're definitely pushing the right buttons there for sure at this point.
Trotz seems to be doing his magic there. On the, I mean, you mentioned Pajot. I mean, look at his line mates, man. Come on, Komarov.
Like Komarov and who else?
Yeah,
Like
like
Wallstrom usually,
yeah,
I think.
Wallstrom. I mean, he's a kid. He
Yeah.
looks like he's going to be all right. Actually, he's improved a lot since the last time I saw him in the NHL. He's looking a lot like he's getting definitely stronger and better. I don't know what he's going to turn into, but still, at this stage, that's a lot to ask from Pajot. Although to be able to put up any points with those two guys on either side of you, don't you think?
you know what? We always kind of say it's kind of funny. Like I think the past 2 years we've always said that we always talk about the New York Islanders and we always talk about like their worst qualities and stuff like that and the line mates. But funny thing is they
Mm-hmm.
win. And that's the weirdest part. They were able to pull away with a big win in this game and yeah, they don't have any superstar but for Matthew Barzell and then like a mediocre defensive core on any other team. If this was Dave Tippett coaching this New York Islanders team, you would probably see this team near the bottom of the league. But since Barry Trotz with this very big defensive system that he has going on there, it's been working and it's slowly starting to get better for the New York Islanders. We were saying we were bashing them right off the get go. They were struggling right off the start, right? Losing games to the Devils, to the Capitals, to the Flyers. But now they're slowly starting to pick up some W's over the Penguins and over the Rangers, and now especially over the Bruins. We'll have to see how well they do up against the Sabres, of course, which will be exciting. But in this game, I'm always been a big fan of Eberle. Even when he was on the Edmonton Oilers, I felt like this guy could shoot and score 30 goals a year and seeing Jordan Eberle getting that point production back up and going again is nice to always see. And Pajot, he was all over the place in that game. I really enjoyed his game, and I've always enjoyed Pajot's
Mm-hmm.
game. When he was in Ottawa, he was a really just an enjoyment to watch. He's a kind of like a Gallagher. He's a really pesky player. He's gonna get in those greasy areas and he's gonna get those goals. He just has to play alongside of good teammates. And I don't know if Leo Komarov is that guy, but they were on Saturday against the Boston Bruins and got a W. So if it works, it
That
works.
just seems to work. That's like that should be the Islanders slogan. I know it doesn't look like it should, but it does work for some reason. It's just
Mm-hmm.
the way they are all the time.
Yeah,
Works, it
They
works.
always get her done
the
somehow.
I agree with that. The Isles' biggest issue was their end of January. Other than that, they didn't start off terribly, and then they just decided to fall off a cliff when they played Jersey, Washington, and then us twice. So that's what dug them in that hole, and now they're digging themselves back out of that hole. It seems, and they're going to build back up. Obviously, they beat New York, or they beat the Rangers. Yeah, that was right. Then they lost to Pitt. Then they beat the Bruins. So they had their two for the last three. It seems like they're moving in the right direction, and they're going to continue to do that. It seems so. We'll have to see what happens moving forward, but I think they're definitely moving. And then if Sorokin starts playing well, then you have another guy behind Varley. That's a big question too. If you can have Varley get his cushion, that would help because you're not going anywhere with Varley overplaying. Because Varley at this point of his career is more of a let me not overplay him, otherwise you'll be taxed by the playoffs. So good luck with
Yeah.
that if you can't get Sorokin going.
And the biggest thing with York in his first game that he got thrown into, he wasn't even supposed to start that first game, so you kind of have an understanding of that game. But Sorokin has been a little bit, he's struggled. But Varlamov, man, his stats that he's putting up for the Islanders there, he's gonna get tired though. Varlamov
Exactly.
has his career. His most games played was 63 there for Colorado, and he put up some great numbers that year. But if you play him too much, he's not going to be able to do as well once you get into the playoffs. He might struggle once you get into the playoffs. So, and he's injury prone as well. And you got to remember that he's had some injuries over his career, and you don't want to re-aggravate those. So getting some Sorokin some time might be smart here for this next couple games, especially since they're going to be going up against the Buffalo Sabres. But you got to be careful about that dynamic duo between Eichel and Hall if you're going to be playing Sorokin. But I think Sorokin, you got to get him going. I don't think he'll be too bad. He put up some great numbers there in the K. We'll have to see though if he will be able to rebound.
Yeah, this is going to be. I mean, we'll talk. We'll hope maybe be able to talk about the games tonight. But he's supposed to be in tonight against Buffalo. So
Oh,
Sorokin's supposed to be in tonight against Buffalo. So that'll be interesting to see. We got a question. CL said, was that game on Saturday, the Detroit game, or was that yesterday? But he asked, what's the worst part of the Preds' loss to the Wings? And the worst part
It
is they
was
just looked absolutely horrible. They have no
yeah,
pushback
Nashville just
whatsoever. They don't seem to have any determination to win a puck along the boards. I mean, it was horrible.
yeah, like one period they got outshot 15-4 by the Detroit Red Wings in the second period. Um, I don't know. Nashville's just they have not been looking Nashville, and the way that they've been playing, they kept a lot of the same players from last year, and even last year they felt like a little bit of a dysfunctional team, and now this year it's just really going to that full effect of them really not being the team that they should be. Especially if you're going up against a Detroit Red Wings, you should be able to outperform them, but they got outperformed themselves. So I think it's just time up. I think the clock is ticking. I think the hot seat is getting very hot for David Poley right now there in Nashville, and even John Haynes as well, which I don't know why they hired him as the coach for Nashville. He just was never the fit for the team, and I don't think he was the perfect fit for the head coaching job there in Nashville.
yeah. This game, I would just say Detroit, for lack of a better word, probably stomped them. I mean, they didn't come out strong. Luke Glendening, who's a guy that's been a journeyman, I've always liked because he slides between forward and center and pretty much does whatever the hell you tell him to do. I've always liked players that are team guys that'll do whatever the heck you tell them to do. Fabry is a guy that all of a sudden going to Detroit is starting to emerge a little bit more and teeter, not much, but a notch up from before and looks more active up a line, obviously, with the Red Wings with a less depth in his former team. So I think they just came to them. Bernier played a much better game than Pekka or Soros, who ended up coming in later. And they just hang out their goalies to dry. That's just how Nashville's been all season. It's either the goalie has a game that he probably should have saved a couple more pucks, or you just blow at defense and the goalie has no chance to saving the puck unless if it's Dominic Hasek when he's 23 years old, and he probably still ain't saving the puck. So like that's how bad their defense has been sometimes. And I don't think a guy that literally would sacrifice his face would even save the puck. Like that's how horrendous their defense is sometimes. They got to improve that. They do got to improve goaltending. I have thought though, like I said in the last video, Pekka when he's actually got better defenses looked decent this year. Soros has just looked pretty bad in general. So you got to figure that out as well because he's the young kid. Obviously, Pecorino's not going to play till he's 48. So you're going to have to figure that out there and find something. So I would say that that's the biggest key. Figure out your defense. Figure out because now that Duchesne's doing a little bit better on offense, Johansson, when he comes back, is what he is. You see if you can integrate him a little bit more. Forsberg's doing good. So I think you got to fix the defense. You got to get Soros confident if he's going to be your guy. If he's not going to be your guy, you got to get him out of there, guy, because Askerov's not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to come over right now. Like you need to find somebody for the interim. So that's what their big issue is here right now: finding the interim goaltender and finding defensemen that actually do not hang your goalie out to dry like you're the Red Wings of last season, to use a Red Wings analogy. I'm talking about the Red Wings game.
Yeah, I I I think it's right now is the time they have to decide which direction they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
First, I agree with you. For me, I mean, it depends. If you're a manager, it depends really on what your owner's saying. Now, Nashville, they've built a pretty solid fan base there, actually. I
Mm-hmm.
think that they could survive a rebuild all right.
Ah,
But
that's the tough thing.
the problem is, what assets do you have to rebuild with? I think if it's me, before I rebuild, I agree with you, Joe. The first thing I'm doing is making sure I get a goaltender and see what this team can do with a goaltender. Pekka Rinne hasn't been bad, but he's 39. You know,
Yeah, he's 39 years old.
and if he's better than your young goaltender, I think we've identified the first issue that you want to take care of right away. You got to get a goaltender in that organization. Saros isn't working out. Maybe he'll work out somewhere else. You can use him as a trade piece to a team that probably isn't going to make it this year, anyways, and try to get a goaltender to stop pucks there. Maybe the one that just beat you, Grice. You know, somebody. At least get some. At least get a goaltender in there that can bring some stability to the defense. Maybe it's hard to play good defense when you're afraid of any shots getting on your goaltender at all.
Yeah.
It's you start second guessing yourself. I mean, on paper they've got some fine defense there. They got the Norris Trophy winner Josie. They got Ekholm. They got Ellis. I thought they upgraded pretty good with getting Boriecki and what's his name from Edmonton there, but Benning. I thought they
Benning.
did pretty well with their upgrades last year. On paper, they should have better defense than they do now. Forward wise, there may be an issue where you need to change something forward wise. The forwards are helping out the defense more, but without the goaltending, what do you do?
And
No,
and this has been the biggest thing for Nashville, I think, is of course the goaltending. I've always kind of seen this ever since they lost to Pittsburgh there in the Stanley Cup Finals, where they kind of just slowly started declining. And you could see that they were making desperate moves, going after Duchesne and signing big contracts to players, and you kind of slowly seen that decline. And yeah, they do, like on paper. When I was making the review on the Nashville Predators, they do on paper they got a really good defensive core. Matt Benning put up some great numbers when he was playing with the Oilers. Ellis, Yossi, Fabro, Tenorti is looking pretty great this year, and Borowiecki. Your offensive core, of course, you're not getting any goal scoring. That's been the biggest problem, and of course, the defense is a liability as well. But when John Haynes was hired to be the head coach of the Nashville Predators, everyone said that this is not a fit for the Nashville Predators. For the Nashville Predators, you almost need like a very trust team coach this team. That's the only way the team real as well as if they was right. I think it was Pierre Laviolette that was coaching the team before John
Yeah,
Haynes,
yes.
which he wasn't doing too bad of a job when he was coaching. Of course, Laviolette does have an expiry date, just like any other coach. But John Haynes just was not the guy for that Nashville Predators team, and it is very, very obvious coming into this that he is just not the coach for the team. And they really did. David Pulley fired Laviolette, and in the next couple days later, they hired John Haynes.
yeah.
I think you got to go after someone that will better fit the team and be slower about it. The way that they rushed right in and hired John Haynes, who was not doing very good there in New Jersey, he was not doing a very good job. He was not able to get the stuff that Jack Hughes. He was not able to make Jack Hughes perform. Just most of that team was not performing last year when John Haynes was the head coach. And he's not able to do it here in Nashville. I just don't think it's a perfect fit. And I think it's time to move on from maybe the GM and maybe away from John Haynes as well.
Well, that's what it has to be. I mean, if you we talked about they have a good defense on paper. They have well, two guys on paper that should be better. Duchesne's doing better now. Johansson is injured, so he can't speak on it at the time, but hasn't been playing well when he's in. So I think you need to see more production from them. But when it comes down to you're not performing to the team you have on paper, usually that points to one of two people or both, the GM and the coach, because the GM could say, well, maybe it's a chemistry thing. Maybe I should get more involved and realize maybe this team just doesn't gel well. They have good players, but they don't gel well. And then the coach should be telling them that. So it's on probably both, but I would say probably 80% Hines and 20% Pulley, because if the coach ain't telling, like, we don't know what goes on in the locker room, but if he's not
Mm-hmm.
reporting, well, there's actually some chemistry rift, and then the GM just finds out about it, well, that's on the coach. You have to tell
Yeah.
your GM what's going on so he can make the moves also for you to then have a better chemistry team. Just because you have stars, a perfect baseball example is when the Marlins added Jose Reyes and all those people years ago, they sucked. They had stars on their team, but were one of the worst performance teams to start because none of them the chemistry wasn't there. They had stars, but there was no chemistry. So you have to
Yeah.
have both ends of it. You can't just have good players. You have to have team chemistry.
Yeah.
And it seems like Nashville has none of that right now. So
Mm-hmm.
that's probably on coaching. I would definitely agree with Payton there, and partially on Pulley. I think, like Payton said, 23 years is enough time. It might be time to move on from there.
Yeah, I'm almost. Yeah, I for sure think Poyle's definitely not going to make it till Askarov gets to play and save his
No,
career.
I doubt it.
But
Yeah.
unless, like I said, he goes out and gets a goaltender and they start stopping pucks like crazy and turns his team around, which I really think is the only thing that
Mm-hmm.
can. And I'm not even saying that would. But I even forgot to mention Fabro, who has been playing very well. So on paper, this defense has been really well good. One thing about the coaching aspect of it, why the heck aren't they playing Rocco Grimaldi higher, more in the lineup? I mean, when you've got a team that doesn't seem like it has the energy it needs, and it does. When it comes right down to it, the Preds don't look like they have much energy out there. They don't have much.
Not,
Well, I would be playing Rocco Grimaldi way higher. He's scoring.
I agree. I agree. Right? It's just like if you were to look at like I know it's always the Edmonton Oilers, but like Josh Archibald is a perfect example, kind of like a Rocco Grimaldi or a Zach Cassian, right? You get that energy from that certain player. It's with a lot of teams. If you need some energy, why don't you throw that little pesky little player to go and throw the body a little bit, maybe go and score you a couple goals? Rocco Grimaldi already has 3 goals on the year for the team and is one of the high school scoring players on the team,
Yeah,
right? Philip Forsberg has 7, and then Rocco Grimaldi is tied for second alongside of Granlund and Duchesne. So why are you not playing Grimaldi? I mean, he's scoring more than Yankruk right now, who should probably be scoring, and same with Luke Kunin. You picked up Kunin to be a goal scorer, and he hasn't really been that factor for the Nashville Predators. They're 22nd in the league for goal scoring, and even worse, they're 27th in the league for goals against. So I think there's definitely this is a year where I think Nashville just has to look themselves in the mirror and say we're not a contender anymore. It's time to maybe look either for a retool or maybe start thinking about a rebuild. And that's the biggest thing that's going to be the hardest thing is Duchesne and Johansson's contract. What are you going to be doing with those guys that are making $8 million a year until 2027, 2026? You're going to be paying those guys a long time,
yeah.
and that's going to be the biggest thing that might stop them from rebuilding.
yeah.
Yeah, well, I said this the other day. I didn't mean to cut you off, Joe, but
No,
I said this the other day on the show last week about Duchesne. I didn't like the way he played on the ice. Obviously, just going to Nashville, but I always liked him in Colorado. He seems to be
Mm-hmm.
coming back around now. Um, I still like the player. So if I was a GM, I would find a way to trade for him and fix the issues he has that make him not focus as much. Where, hell, if he wanted me to make a schedule for him, I would even make a schedule. If he wants you, you can go play country music at these allotted times. This can be
Matt Duchene
this can
needs
be
to
when
play alongside of good players.
Yeah.
And Nashville just they don't have the goal scoring
No,
talent. They don't have the wingers to play alongside of Matt Duchene. They got really their best two wingers is Forsberg and Arvidsson, and then it's just a bunch of third, fourth liners that you got on the team.
developing. Yeah. I
Right?
mean, I
Like,
would just say my whole thing is I think his balance is off.
mm-hmm.
That's what, just from reading stuff, I don't think he has a good work life balance.
Yeah.
So you need to find that. And I think if you trade for him, saying, look, I like country music. I could highly care less if you play country music. Hell, I'll come to one of your shows. But let's schedule something here so we know. I know when you're at a show. So one, I don't call you and interrupt your show, and two, we don't have issues. And then doing that, I think, makes the player know you're fully behind him doing his side hustle, but you want him to also be focused entirely on his actual hustle,
Yeah.
which kind of can balance both ways. I know that's taking it an extra step, but some people are too lazy to do it.
Well, there's
If
there.
in order to make the guy the best, make the guy the best. Don't be overly lazy and say, "Well, I'm involved in too much stuff already. I can't get involved in his life." Do what you got to do.
That there's another aspect to that though. If in order to do that, you also have to identify the fact that he can't be the guy on your team. And the thing was,
Yeah.
when he left Colorado, he was saying that he wanted to go somewhere and be the guy. He wanted to be the guy. That was part of what he was saying. But he doesn't do that. You can want to be that all you want. But if you've got other aspects of your life that are of equal importance, like, do you think Crosby spends morning to night in a rink. Taves, these true captains, their life is that. Their life is not that and something. Their life is that. Bergeron.
Granted, that's a breed
So,
though.
so
Most people can't just work, work, work. Most people need a
well, I
balance.
realize that, but
Like,
most captains that are true captains are. Let's put it this way: if you've got Duchesne and I don't think he's the captain of that team, but he's still a big leadership role on that team, and you don't have anybody that is devoted completely to hockey on that team, which it doesn't appear they do. What are these young guys going to be like? Like, you need somebody to be able to motivate people to put max effort towards this craft. It doesn't have to be
Mm-hmm.
everybody, but it has to be somebody. And Duchesne's not that. So if you're going to bring him into an organization, you have to bring it into an organization. I agree with what you're saying, where you realize that he's not that. The problem was Poyle did not realize that.
yeah, it's a good
I
point.
think that's probably
Yeah.
it here. And he's that's going to really affect the team when you don't have that quote. Maybe Josie is, I'm not sure, but I don't see anybody on the top that stands out right away on my head to say that guy's that on that team. Where you can go down
I
great
think
teams and you can pick people like that all the time.
I think with Poli, like when I was watching him, because I always I loved Poli as a GM. I think he's always done great work with the Nashville Predators and making them the team that they are today. But you could see like when they picked up Johansson and they wanted him to be the future first line guy. They've always been looking for that number one centerman for that team there in Nashville. And they're like, oh, here we go, Matt Duchene. Let's just give him a big old $8 million deal, and he'll be the big captain. He'll save us, and he'll be that big centerman for the team. And Matt Duchene hasn't really been that guy. And I think what Nashville should have did instead of picking up Duchene is drafting. There is some huge, massive centerman prospects coming up here in this next year. Maybe focus on that next year where Shane Wright, big guy there from I think it's Kingston
He's
there in
2000 next year
Ontario.
after that, Shane, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He is a big time prospect that could honestly change the Nashville Predators' entire system. Of course, if they were to rebuild the team and to go that route, if they were going to do that. Um, Now they would have to clear cap space, of course, with Duchesne and try to get those guys out of there, which would almost be impossible. But we'll have to see how Nashville kind of goes through this maze stuff that they have to deal with right now, especially if they're going to continue to play like they are playing right now.
I agree with you. Poyle has made some cool moves on paper in the past, and I
Hmm.
just wonder, you know, who almost could save this place for one more shot to finally in his career before he takes off, because he's did it so many times before, and is the guy that just quit, Rutherford. Rutherford might be able to find the chemistry issues and fix them really quick. That's what he was always good at. He's going to leave you high and dry when it's done, but he can fill in holes real quick and create a Stanley Cup team. I think that's kind of what Poyle is missing, is the whole chemistry aspect of a team building system. He's great at getting picks, prospects, players with some sort of skill level, and winning a lot of trades. Like, what was that one? How we got Forsberg, for instance, for Erat from Washington, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a
yeah, it
that,
was like Martin Erat.
yeah,
It
It's a
was,
terrible trade for Washington.
terrible trade.
oh Lord, it
Yeah,
was. It was like, I think it was Washington was trying to build up for like a playoff run, and they picked up Erat. Erat played like crap in the playoffs. It was he was traded from Washington to Nashville for Martin Erat and Michael Latta. Erat in the playoffs put up what year did that trade go through? It was 2013, so that meant he only played 4 games in the playoffs, and in those 9 games, he had 3 points in the regular season, and in the playoffs, he had 0 points in 4 games. And then next year, he only had 24 points in 53 games, and only had 1 goal in those 53 games.
Yeah, it's not helpful at all.
Nope.
Yeah.
well, thank you.
And Michael
I'm
Latta was
getting,
just
I'm,
a AHL
I'm
guy.
getting, we're getting compliments for our bow ties. Yes,
Oh, thank
Steel
you.
Flyers is very professional. He likes professional atmosphere. So I said, if I'm going to be professional, I'm wearing a bow tie, and I'm wearing a bow tie.
Yeah, I just don't rock ties,
Yeah,
not
Joe's not a
happening.
bow tie
Yeah.
guy. Joe's freaking,
I got to get my
Joe's that
other.
blue collar tie and shirt guy. I love it. I love it. He looks freaking amazing. It's the best. It was like those old,
Well, this shirt
Joe's
makes
like
me
those,
look like I should go out and start cutting wood after
yeah,
like
yeah,
that's what this should like. I should get a chainsaw and
yeah.
just start
All
like
right,
walking
guys, I'm
out.
gonna go and cut some wood.
When,
Yeah,
when,
I gotta go and start my fire.
yeah, when Steel
Gotta get
Flyers
my
is
place warmed up.
huge, it's going to start a whole new trend, man. Joe's going to start a whole new trend. It's going to be amazing. But he reminds me of the,
that'll be how I get the guys to work out. I'll invite like all the players on the fan. I'm just like, just come lift wood at my house.
yeah.
Like, it'll get you stronger a lot faster.
He reminds me of those old school coaches back in the day when you'd see them and their tie was a little bit off and they were wearing, they were like totally
No,
disheveled.
that's how I would entirely be. If I was a coach, I would literally because I'm focused on the work. I would just be like, let me tie this real
Yeah,
quick,
I'll just throw this on
and
and
then
freaking
we'll
off
get
we
out
go.
there where it's like they'll be like, "Yo, you look like an idiot," and I'll be like, "I don't care. We have to talk about what's going on with the team. I don't care what I look like. Let's just
Yeah,
go." Like I've always cared more about what we're doing than
yeah,
about that stuff.
yeah, yeah,
And I would be the same exact way as a coach or a GM or something. Like I would. Well, first of all, as a GM, I'd probably fall asleep in my office constantly. I'm not gonna lie. Like I would like that guy that never goes home, and they're like, "Did you go home last night, sir?" No, I forgot. like I feel like that would definitely happen a couple times to me. But yeah, I just have that old school mentality with a lot of things. Same with the sports, and say that's why I like the fact there's more fighting this year. There has been more fighting this year. Guys have actually, which is weird
Hmm.
because they recommend you not to with the things going on. But there has been more fighting, and I think it might be because of the things going on. Because if I'm on the ice playing, I have a lot more frustration in life right now with the way the world is. I'm not around my family as much, et cetera, et cetera. So I
yeah,
might want to, if we're losing by a couple points, say, "Hey, get over here. I'm fighting you."
yeah.
Like you're more inclined to do that to motivate your team. So I think it's been fun watching the fights this year, and a lot of guys have been stepping up to that level there, and it was a very nice, fun. Jacket said Paul Bunyan.
Paul Bunyan, yeah.
Paul Bunyan, thank you.
All done,
But yeah, it's fun doing all this, and I just figured lumberjack. This is my favorite shirt that I have. The other one's that white short sleeve one that I wear all the
Yeah,
time. That's the I
yeah,
like the most. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I only have shirts. I just continuously wash them because I don't have a bunch of shirts I like from high school. Some of them I hate, honestly, so I don't really wear them often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in all honesty, I never wore ties before this, except for when I was working, because I was a coach driver for a while. But otherwise, I abhorred them. But
Oh,
actually, I'm
it's,
kind of having fun with it now. Okay, let's get into the next game. This is one that us hockey fans, I find like, for me, I like to talk about games like this. I like talking about these two teams because to me, they're very interesting. And that's the Carolina Hurricanes and the Dallas Stars. Can somebody figure out the Dallas Stars for me this year? Because I cannot figure them out. Are they good? Are they
no.
bad? Are they what are they?
I, oh man, I don't. Even I don't even know. They're
I,
5-3-4, and they're like a mystery right
uh,
now.
no, I don't know. I'm the same. Like usually, all three of us would have some idea of how to talk about a team. The only guy I know how to talk. I could talk about some guys on the Stars. I love Adi, but other like the overall team, I don't know. Like it's so back and forth. You had Hadobin. It seemed like showed up late because he was out having a good time, and then that got him in trouble. And then you had Ottinger come in and look good, but like the goaltending's not your issue. Your issue is having everyone else step up consistently throughout games. And for some reason, their highs are like as high as Mount Everest, and their lows are in Death Valley. And you're just like, what is like? There's no way to judge a team that's that polar. Usually, you don't see it that polar opposite. You see it a little bit coming to the middle, and Dallas hasn't even come to the middle at close yet. So I'm waiting for them to kind of come like have the magnetic connection middling out their game so it makes more sense because they make no sense right now.
Well, I think the biggest thing for Dallas is injuries have been kind of
Yeah,
hard for them, especially not having Sagan and then Radulov as well.
yeah.
Like, I'll give one player, Pavelski, has been
Mm-hmm.
a very good
Mm.
player for the Dallas Stars. A surprise, to say the least, especially for fantasy teams. If you picked up Pavelski, I bet you're just absolutely loving that because Pavelski's put up 17 points in 12 games. He's been amazing for the Dallas Stars. And I mean, they're definitely not putting up like bad numbers. They're 10th in goals against, they're 16th in goals for. They're not putting up too bad numbers. There's just some games are just they're losing a lot in shootout. They're sending it a lot to games like even this game, right? Went to
Shootout, yeah.
shootout, right? They've had 4 shootout losses, which I mean, I don't even think that I think that's the most in the entire league right
Reminds
now,
me of the Flyers, honestly.
right? So
These
like
Flyers teams.
I mean, if you lose in the shootout or overtime, it really doesn't justify how your team really is, and especially since Dallas had that kind of like uh, long layoff where they weren't able to play for a while because of COVID. But this game, I didn't really. But I don't think it's too bad. Of course, Atlanta did pull away the W in it looks like they went back and forth. Like there's one period where the shots were tied, but it didn't look like too bad of a game for Dallas. And Nedeljkovic didn't look too bad, but definitely needed to make a bit more saves. And Jake Oettinger, I've been liking him as well. He was supposed to be a big prospect there for Dallas. He was supposed to be kind of like the future, and he hasn't looked too bad in the couple of games that he's been in.
He was a little slow. He wasn't his best that we've seen this year in this one, but he's a young guy and he's a goaltender. He's not going to be great all the time. I agree with you with Nedeljkovic, though. Before you move on, though, I want to say, Elliot, yeah, these kids are geniuses. They're brilliant, buddy. That's why we have them on SteelFlyers.com, All Sports Network. They're young, but don't let their youth fool you. They know their shit. For sure. Nedeljkovic.
Payton said you're ready for prom.
What's that?
They said you're ready for prom in the chat.
Yeah,
He's got
I
That's the
want
funny
him.
thing. I did wear this suit for prom.
I want him to maintain
there you
that.
go.
I want you to maintain that as long as we do this. I want you to buy prom suits for sure. I'm gonna get all the bow ties for like
Wear
all the teams in
Just
the
for
league.
prom.
I'm gonna be like the
Just
Don Cherry
wa-
of the thing.
walk into Moore's suits and be like, I want a prom suit. You're like 30
Yeah, didn't you just?
though.
Yeah, you're like
I want
52.
a prom suit. I don't care. Just
Anyways,
give me something
yeah.
that look like a prom suit.
Yeah, we'll have
Prom suit.
we'll be like Don Cherry and we'll put them all up for charity too. I'll have bow ties and prom suits. It's gonna be fun. Nedeljkovic looked good, and you know what? Uh, he really hasn't. He's really struggled in the NHL up until this point. But I gotta say, I think he's probably gonna make it from what I've seen now. I think if he keeps up where he is now, he'll at least be a backup. But who knows? He's looked a lot better. Could be saving this franchise from having to go out and get a give up a high draft pick for or something like that for a goaltender as well.
That's what they were hoping. They
Yeah.
were hoping that he was going to become that guy to save them. It took a little bit longer. Goalies are an oddity. Sometimes guys will come up at 22, other guys will come up at 27, other guys will come up at 25, and they're hit it. So, or they'll come up earlier, and then like Markstrom not hit it as a big name for a couple years, but be good otherwise. So, it really depends on the guy. But Nedeljkovic, yeah, he definitely seemed to balance himself out. He looked good in other levels. Now it seems like he's finally starting to look good at the NHL, and that's the biggest part of having success, obviously, in your career. So good for him.
Yeah. As far as the game, I did watch quite a bit of the game. Carolina just impresses me as a team that is more and more becoming a team that can win any type of game. And we always talk about find a way to win. I find Carolina's learning that more, becoming more and more like that. Very early on, this is still a very young team, but they seem to have it already. They could really do some damage this year, especially if their
And
goaltending holds up.
especially if Vincent Trocheck keeps on producing.
Oh
This was
yeah,
when
absolutely.
we were talking about the in the rate or on the off season. Me and you, Pearlo, were talking about Trocheck and how much he was kind of struggling. And I was always like, this guy has played great before there in Florida. This was a great two-way guy. He kind of fell off, and this year he's jumped right back on that horse. And especially even Jake Gardner, he had two big assists in this game as well, and he's looking like he's kind of getting back into that offensive form that Jake Gardner used to be in. So Carolina's getting a lot of the gambles that they took, and you know what? That's the Rod Brendamore effect. I think that he has. I think the Carolina Hurricanes have the team to do it, but they don't have the goaltending, and especially since Mrazek is out right now, who was performing great. James Reimer has just been. I don't know. He's definitely has not been the guy for the Carolina Hurricanes. And if Nedeljkovic could really step up for the Carolina Hurricanes in these next couple games, that will be huge for the Carolina Hurricanes moving forward because then you don't have to focus on James Reimer as much. You could actually have another nice tandem with Nedeljkovic and James Reimer, and you could have a future starting goalie in him as well. So the future's looking bright in that goaltending. We'll have to see if Nedeljkovic can really start performing, and that's the weird thing with goalies. It's the weird goalie voodoo. You never really know how good a goalie will play until he puts a good 20, 30 games underneath of his belt.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
we've seen it with Andrew Hammond. I mean, he went baller in his first couple games, and the Hamburglar, he went absolute baller in his first couple
he just
games,
got called back up too.
and then and then he dropped.
Yeah, I think he got called up by Minnesota too. I saw that on Twitter. The Hamburg was back.
Hamburglar.
Yeah, he always just shows up every once in a while. We've been talking guys like that. It's just all of a sudden he just always finds his way back into the league. It's crazy. Uh,
Yeah.
Um, by the way, the Arizona St. Louis game is on now. I did find it. It just wasn't marked. So
Oh, that's right. That played where I forgot it's President's Day, and they put stuff on earlier for President's Day.
yeah, well
But
here it's Family Day.
Sweet.
I think that's what it is. Family Day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Today's
What
family
a
day.
great time to have Family Day in the middle of February. Perfect. Perfect. Middle of February in Alberta. Yeah, let's have Family Day. It's minus. It's minus.
don't want to go in.
It's minus
It's
hell
freezing.
right now. Like, yeah, exactly. It's. Anyways, so
Yeah, the big. I was just gonna say the big thing, Piero, too, is your boy Nikas was back last game.
Nietzsche's. Yes, yes.
He's played last
Mm.
game, and then Brock Mcginn has also been electric this year as well for Carolina. He seems to be really starting to up his ante, and he seemed like he was always a player too. We talk about the tenacious guys that'll go at anybody with only being about 5'11", 6 foot. He's one of those guys, and it seems like he's starting to balance now, not taking some of the bad penalties he took when he first came up, and now being that aggressive guy in very smart ways. Which he had that in his game already. It's just he would have those mixed in couple penalties that you would go, Brock, don't do that.
Yeah,
But now he doesn't do that anymore, and that's going to be a big aid to his
yeah,
game.
and I think it was also for Brock was finding that offensive instinct where it's where you can play physically but also be in the right spots when you need to score. He's
Exactly.
getting a lot of goals from right in those juicy spots right now, and that's because he's there. So it's just taken him a while, and it's going to take most players a while. Not most players don't have it naturally when they're 18 years old or 19, to find that
True.
combination. And the thing with Brock McGinn is he always found a way to stay in the lineup his whole career. And now it's reached that point where he has been able to take his game to a whole new level, it seems. And again, all of this we can say with that seems to have happened since they brought Brindamore in, and I don't think that's any coincidence.
Yeah. Well, when you have a work ethic like a McGinn, you're going to stay in the lineup if everyone knows you're putting out your 110%. Even if you're not performing the best, a coach likes the fact that you're teaching everyone effort. Because some guys do the opposite. They have great skill, but they kind of lackadaisical at sometimes. So if you have a guy in your lineup that's always showing 110%, that just helps the rest of the team, even if he is in a little bit of a struggle period like he was in past years. We're now showing that great continued confidence in him seems to have worked and helped big time. So
You got anything else on this one, Peyton, or shall we move on to the next game?
I think we should move on to the next game. I think that'll be
And
perfect.
I believe the next game we're gonna have to talk about Montreal Toronto. Uh,
Perfect.
what Montreal Toronto? The let's face
This
it, the Maple
turned.
Leafs outplayed them, right?
Yeah, I think I think they're pushing back there in that third period a little bit there. Montreal started playing a lot better, but the first two periods, Toronto won that game. I think if you were to talk to anyone else, I think Toronto worked their butts off in that starting of the game and really outplayed Montreal, kind of like how Edmonton was outplaying Montreal, and then Toffoli got a big one, and then of course Gallagher again that big game-winning goal there for the Montreal Canadiens. It was a close one. Montreal or Toronto definitely deserved this victory, but as a team there in Toronto, if you're dominating, you got to be able to put up more goals. Like that's the biggest thing for Toronto, and they weren't able to put up as many goals. They were only put up one in the first period. They weren't able to put up any in the second period. But I mean, it's only one loss. Toronto's been dominating, so they still have a great record at 11-3-1. So I don't see this as too much of a hit. They played great, so they're gonna keep their heads up and they're gonna go for that next big W the next game.
Yeah,
yeah, I don't see it as too much of a hit. The only thing that I think for the first time ever we disagreed on is I don't think they deserve to win the game because it's all about your close. And I say it with the Flyers. I
Hmm.
insult them all the time about their closing of games. So I can't not do it to a team I don't even have a fanship for. So the Maple Leafs, it's all about your close. You got doubled in shots in the third. What's that about?
Yeah,
You got to be
yeah.
able to come out and close the game, and you let the two high energy balls of the team, to Foley's coming in, get open in front of the net.
Yeah, that
That's a
was a
big
bad
mistake.
defensive play.
Yeah, that was a terrible
It was
defensive play.
lazy. It was really lazy, even from Jake Muzzin. Like
Yeah,
you
which is
can't,
rare.
and then just letting like Travis Boyd. I think there was no one in front of the net either to cover it, but they were legit just puck watching, and,
Exactly.
and that's what it felt like.
Exactly. And then you had Gallagher get the rebound where it was like you could have easily scored that because nobody. Brendan Gallagher scores goals that are hard in front of the net. You think he's not going to score and you have an
That
easy
puck,
rebound to put.
legit, like he was given so much time. Like Brody didn't lock him up, didn't push him, nothing. Just let him score that goal. It
Yeah,
was the easiest goal for Gallagher.
yeah, that's why I feel in the end they really played a better game through two, but it's all about the closure. So in the end, I
Yeah.
felt like they deserved to lose, but I agree with the second point of what you said, though, where I don't think it's going to destroy Toronto at all. I still think they're the better team on paper. In a series, I still think Toronto beats Montreal.
Yeah,
That's my personal opinion, but I think it might be getting closer if they keep having bad closeouts against Montreal in the future when they play them like this. Then I might change that opinion in the future.
I think if both teams played the way they did in this game over and over and over again, Toronto would win the game more than Montreal. So yeah,
Also, they've been playing Frederick Anderson a lot lately as well.
that's
I don't
Yeah,
think
because
because
Jack
Campbell's
Campbell's been
hurt,
out.
right?
Yeah, they've just been playing Frederick Anderson almost every
Yeah.
game. They do have a nice stretch though. Ottawa for the next couple days. They have a back-to-back against Ottawa, and then they're playing Ottawa tonight as well. So shouldn't be too bad of a stretch for the Toronto Maple Leafs, which is extremely lucky since Jack Campbell is out of the lineup right now for them.
Yeah, I don't
that's for sure.
who's backup now that he's out. I mean, they had Dell. They got Dell, and then they lost him to New Jersey, and he still hasn't played in New Jersey.
Who he just got called up actually though, Aaron Dell. They brought him
From New
today, I think.
Jersey?
Yeah, the New Jersey added him from conditioning stint.
Oh, Hutchinson. He's the emergency loan
Oh
right now,
yeah,
Michael Hutchinson.
right. Hutchinson, that's who it is. My gosh, he's back again. Another guy that just creeps back in the league every once in
Michael.
a while.
Hmm.
Yeah, not a guy I want to be resting my hopes in for sure. But yeah, um, yeah, I think they're going to be fine. Like I said, if they play like this all the time, finishing is definitely something big. But it was a weird game where it was a low shooting too, and
Yeah, it
that's
was.
not something you seem to get for Montreal or Toronto. A lot of work in the neutral zone. Is that possible uh, that Julian identified this and said we don't want to run and gun with this team for sure? So let's almost play like almost felt like Montreal was playing a little bit of a trap.
I think you have to. I mean, Toronto is what is it like third in goals for? They will rip you apart, even if you have one of the greatest goalies in the league. I mean, Carey Price has been very skeptical at some moments of time this year, but that's the way you have to play. Like, you look at the hits: 46 hits to 16 for the Canadians. Right, every game that the Canadians play, they double, triple the hits of any other team that they play. And the way that they played a very shut down defensive game. Nylander only got a shot on the net. Like you had Hyman who only had a shot, Marner who only had four, Matthews only had five. You like to see those guys, of course, shoot a little bit more, and most of your team shoot a little bit more. You didn't have that like big point production like you usually have for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Usually they score a little bit more. Like this is the first time that they've been held to one goal since they lost against the Edmonton Oilers in their fifth game of the season. Every game they've been scoring about 3-4 goals a game, and even more when they were facing off against the Vancouver Canucks. So this team definitely, if you're able to shut down their goal scoring, you're going to be able to win the game because they're not the strongest team defensively. So they're going to let in 2-3 goals a game. And if you're able to score that, then you'll most likely will win if you're able to shut down that goal scoring. And Toronto only had 22 shots in this game compared to the Canadians'
Hmm.
25, which was probably one of the biggest storylines in that game.
Yeah, yeah. It seemed to me that Julian just realized that they weren't going to be able to run and gun at all with this team, and did what they can to slow the
Yeah.
game down, slow them down, and all of that sort of thing. You know, we know that Tortorella likes to do all that sort of stuff as well. But Julian is just as inept, just as adept, not inept. That's the opposite. Adept of that.
Also to note, there's barely any penalties taken in that game either.
Yeah,
Only one by the
and that's saying a
one by the
lot for
Montreal Canadiens.
Montreal, because Montreal is
Yeah,
probably the most one of the most penalized teams in the league.
Well, it
yeah,
goes with physical. If you're overly physical, you're more prone to sometimes
Right.
take bad penalties or have a ref that decides something that's not even remotely close to a boarding or an elbowing is an elbowing. So there's also that. You have to give in the non-West Macaulay crew error factor of the referees. other than Wes's crew, I don't have a lot of positive things to say about reffing. But yeah, you got to factor in human error as well. When it comes to being more physical, there's a lot of penalties for the more physical teams that I don't think are penalties.
Yeah.
Like check penalties that get called that would have never been called even 3 years ago, let alone now. Let alone like 20. So like I think they are the league when it comes to certain crews are a lot more ticky tacky with the overly physical team.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I found interesting, I don't even know how this is possible, but the Canadians only had 4 block shots all game.
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
4 block
So
shots all game.
Toronto really wasn't shooting that puck a lot last night. Wow, 4 block shots to 21 of, yeah, wow, honestly. So that means 20, that would have been almost 40 shots of the Canadians in that game if a lot of those shots didn't get blocked by the Maple Leafs.
Did-
Yeah,
Wow.
they definitely they that's why I feel they didn't deserve to win this game because they didn't come out with their strong normal Toronto tenacity you've seen since they added some of the spunk
Hmm.
players on that team in the last year rather than just having all skill. Now they added some spunk guys, obviously, and one of them's obviously the long-time NHLer and Jason Spezza, who turned back the clock a couple weeks ago and scored a hat trick. But yeah, they added the guys that are able to bring grit. Obviously, Engvall is a similar little guy, but will not back down, or not a little, a bigger guy will not back down. Paton's a little guy that seems to sometimes still go after people. That's mix those two up in my head. But they have guys that whether they're big or small, they tend to be more aggressive, and that's why I think they're in a better spot this year. Where before they had all skill, and not enough guys that were playoff guys that would kind of come right at somebody when need be.
Hmm.
Yeah. It looks like the Blues Jackets game looks like a slugfest. Yeah, it does. It's I got AZ on this one and the under. So and it looks like the under is going to hold, but a lot of games this year. Uh, the scoring's been in the third period when teams start getting tired. Do you notice that?
Yeah, yeah, I noticed that a lot. Especially as an Oilers fan, because the first couple games of the year we seem to lose in the third period, and I've been noticing that in a lot of games where whoever's more tired will most likely lose the game in the third period. If you get off to a hot start in the game, you kind of have to maintain it, and a lot of teams not having that killer mindset once you get into that third period to finish off your opponent. And I've been seeing it a lot. I've been seeing it improve a bit for the Oilers, where they have been having that killer attitude, especially when they went up against the Canadians when Canadians had that back to back there and they lost, or Oilers won 3-0. And I think that's the biggest thing. A lot of teams have to kind of change. It's going to be dependent on schedule too. You gotta play in that third period. Even if you have the lead, you gotta finish that game off. There's still 20 minutes left to go, and in a Canadian division like this or any division, you got every win's pivotal, especially after this. Right now, we're 15 games down in the league. Some teams haven't even played 15 games yet, but most teams have. We only got a couple more games left to go in this league. This league is gonna go by very, very fast. So if you lose in that third period, that is gonna be a huge loss for your team moving forward. For Toronto, it's not gonna hurt too much because they are one of the better teams in the league this year. But losses can add up, especially if you're losing the games in the third period. And I'm most likely Sheldon Keefe will have a talk with the team and fix that up.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely agree on that.
Okay, let's go to the next game. We're running out of time here. Canucks Flames. Finally, my Canucks look like I know they can look like, and I know they're going to come back. What do you guys think?
Oh man, the Flames looked horrible in this
Yep.
game, which is pretty evident because that's how we've been predicting this team for a while now. Jacob Markstrom was huge for the team, played absolutely fantastic for the Calgary Flames. Really saved them in this game. Also, McKay, he made his debut there for the Calgary Flames. I think he was playing in the NCAA. I'm not too sure though on that guy. I don't know too much about him, but Jacob Markstrom was a really big Lord and Savior practically for the Calgary Flames, and was the only reason why this game was a 3-1 game. 46 shots for the Canucks, absolute craziness. I'm even surprised that there wasn't 10 goals by the Canucks in this game. Honestly, they got outplayed, and Canucks deserved this victory. And I'm hoping that this momentum will turn into some positive stuff for the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, well, the reason I would say it wasn't 10 goals was simply Mark's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jake is playing like he did before going to the Flames. The Flames would not be where they're at now if it wasn't for Markstrom saving their buns every single time that their defense decides to leave a guy wide open in front of the net, or for a slap shot for that matter. He's definitely been stepping up big time. Mackey, I know went to, I want to say, Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. I just remember reading something about him in the offseason where when Pearlo and I were on a pod before, I remember bringing him up. I want to say it was Minnesota, but I can't remember exactly. I'm trying to bring it up. Yeah, Minnesota State. There it is. I just got it. And so you just have to see what he put up 24, 25, and then 12 in his first season. So he was pretty solid there, a big kid, see what he's able to do. But obviously playing a team with the skill of Winnipeg is not Vancouver is not your easiest first opponent as a young undrafted, I believe, on defenseman also. So I mean that's also a thing that's going to take a bit for him, but we'll see what he's able to become. I definitely wish him success. But Vancouver throttled them in this game. This was not even a
Yeah.
game. The
Yeah.
only reason this was a game scorebook wise was because of Jacob Markstrom. If you just looked at the score and looked at no stats, you say, that was a pretty decent closing 3-1 game. And you see that the shots were 46-19, and every other stat is completely swayed in the way of Vancouver. That's all Vancouver. Markstrom's the only reason it was a 2-goal game.
Yeah, Markstrom's been
Man,
almost playing
wow.
Vesna level this year so far.
Yeah, pretty
Under
much.
people are, yeah, he's
He honestly, he's a lot of the reason why Calgary has been winning a
at,
lot of these
at all.
games.
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
like you look at Winnipeg 3-2, that was a close one. Markstrom absolutely saved them in the game against the Edmonton Oilers. Jacob Markstrom has been a big part of the Calgary Flames and being a very successful part. Especially the defense for the Calgary Flames. I'm definitely not going to bash them fully because I think that the defense, of course, it didn't really show up in this game, but the defense of Giordano, especially the pair between Tanev and Hannafin, have been one of the better defensive pairings for the Calgary Flames. The biggest thing I have to say against the Calgary Flames is their forward depth. Why are they playing Lucic 15 minutes worth of ice time? Yes, he's been a little bit hot lately, but he's still a liability on the ice.
Hmm.
And um, moving forward for Calgary, I don't know. You definitely gotta have a bounce back game against, especially going up against the Vancouver Canucks once again tonight, and then up against them once again. You some big victories, especially at that 7-6 record. The Calgary Flames have to start winning some games if they don't want to. Winnipeg, Edmonton, Vancouver, especially if Vancouver's going to start sparking that kind of red hot flame, the Calgary Flames have to get themselves going tonight to continue that success and maybe moving into the playoffs.
Yeah, we got a little time. We're going to talk about two of the games. There was the games last night, but I wanted to talk a little bit this time about the series, really in general, because one of the games is on right now. But I still this is the game that I think turns Vancouver around. They start running once they get that energy back. I just can't see this team's got too
Mm-hmm.
much talent. Too much talent.
Yeah.
This team's going to go off. I know they are, for sure. Jacket says go Nucks. Nucks fan. Well, you should be happy then, because I think they're going to do great. The whole series of St. Louis, Arizona. Quickly, what's your take on this? Arizona surprising, I would say. St. Louis surprising the other way. What is it that's making Arizona play so well, and what is it that is the reason St. Louis doesn't look as good as they have in the past? Go, Joe. What do you think?
Me. Well, Arizona is a couple parts. Tocchet just pushes the most out of anybody that goes on his team. And then the weird part is Kemper hasn't even played smooth sailing in every game, and they still figure out ways to be pretty good this year. I would say this is probably not one of his hottest starts in a season in his career. Ronta's looked all right, obviously, but they've been figuring it out. We talked about teams that have figured out ways to win. That's exactly what Arizona's done, especially last game, St. Louis was able to beat them in a shootout, but they had to, or an OT, but they had to take them all the way to then. Like they can't figure out a way usually to beat this team in regulation, and that's going to hurt you in the end too because you're in the same division. You're giving them more and more points every time in order to stay close to you. So the big thing for St. Louis, who's supposed to obviously be the better team, is figure it out. For Arizona, it's you just got to keep pushing. It seems like you got a good energy vibe going there. Everybody's kind of together. You haven't even got Keller fully on all cylinders yet, but you got Dvorak doing well. You got Garland doing well again, and others. So if you can get Keller and others on full cylinders, then you're really going to potentially be able to be a surprise team that actually makes it, and then people go, "Wow, the Coyotes made." So that has the chance of being that if everything can come to fruition. I just feel like they have a chance to be a team similar to Winnipeg that might die off eventually. But if they can keep this energy rush going, it's a shorter season, you have a much better chance. Maybe they can be the surprise team that makes them because you have a much better chance in this shortened season to keep your energy momentum going. Look at the Marlins. There's no chance in hell the Florida Marlins are making the MLB playoffs if they played a full season. Absolutely none. So they were able to take a good run and turn it into a playoff appearance. Maybe Arizona can do that in the NHL.
Yeah, for St. Louis, I think I don't even think they got like. I think the biggest problem right now for them is defense. They're still playing not too bad, 9-4-2 record. Goals for is off the wall this year. Big players like Kyrie's been playing great. Perron, even Hoffman's been point producing. But I think the biggest thing for them is defense. Losing Petrangelo is kind of a big hit on your team. Is a defender myself, it's hard to kind of build that chemistry with new defensive partners, right? You have Krug, Falk playing his first full year, and Justin Falk has been looking absolutely amazing lately for the St. Louis Blues. I think the biggest thing is that they're having to rely on Binnington so much. Husso has been a big time liability for the St. Louis Blues. An 875 save percentage, a 3.74 goals against. He has just not been that number one guy, that number one backup for the St. Louis Blues, and we all called it. Husso had to play way better than what he's ever played before, and he's not really living up to that standard. And Binnington's having to bail him out. But honestly, the defensive core is not looking too bad. I'm watching a little bit of this game right now. They are giving some good opportunities to players like Garland and letting those guys get some opportune chances, which you can't let, right? If you're letting Garland and Keller and those guys get some huge opportunities, then they're gonna burn you. Also, huge shout out to Jacob Chichurin. He's been stepping up in replacement of Oliver Ekman Larson since he's been injured as well, and becoming that kind of that top defenseman Arizona's been kind of dreaming about, especially with his point producing
Yeah,
wise this
Chikrin
year
is a
and only having a
boss.
-1.
Chikrin's a boss. Probably the most
He's
underrated
been great
defenseman in
this
the league
year.
right now. Unbelievable, great defenseman there for Arizona for sure. Yeah, yeah,
And
totally.
Phil Kessel as well. Phil Kessel has been point producing there for the Arizona Coyotes, which helps them out a lot. You need that point production. But I think the biggest thing for St. Louis is this Husso, and having to play Binnington too much is going to be a big de facto over there for St. Louis.
Well,
Yeah, I think it's what you said, Steve. Huso has a great chemistry with Bennington in the room. You have to make a decision as a team.
mm,
Are you going more for chemistry in your goaltender room, or are you going to try to win another cup?
yeah,
Like, what are you going for here?
yeah,
If you want to have good mentality behind Bennington all the time, and all you're focusing on is Bennington's off the ice plus on the ice and balancing both, then maybe you have to keep Huso. If you can find a way to make them still be boys and talk about because it's not like there's no Zoom and there's like technology nowadays. If he's the starting goalie in the AHL, it's going to be pretty easy to contact him if you're Jordan Bennington and you want to. So I mean, they should still be able to have a great relationship even if he's not his backup. So I
Mm-hmm.
think they have to come to the decision: do you want a guy that works well as his backup just because of he makes him very comfortable and he talks the way that Bennington likes to talk? Or would you rather get a guy that probably also does that, like how Moose did that, Elliott with Hart, but that has a little bit more spunk in their skates at the NHL level than Billy Huso, at least at this point of his career? I'm not saying, I don't think any of us are saying he maybe has no chance. It's just right now he's not looking solid.
Yeah.
yeah. It's yeah. When I was mentioning that, I was talking about uh, Hardy Ulstrom, the Colorado Rockies goaltender that Don Cherry said he would, he would be an awesome. He was great in the room. He was great with other teammates. Everybody loves him. He would be an awesome goaltender if he could just stop pucks. So that's what
Pretty
Huso
mean shoot.
is at the moment too. It seems. Maybe we got a situation where Jordan Bennington is maybe a little too high maintenance too, as well. Like when you start taking, when you start picking players based on how well they're going to get along with your number one over whether how well they're going to do at their craft, maybe you got a problem there.
Yeah, that's what I was more getting
Yeah,
at. Yeah.
yeah. So, anyways, we got this will probably the next game will probably take a while to talk about. I don't think we'll talk much about Vegas, Colorado, because Colorado hadn't played for well, however, like for a long time. They didn't have a lot of guys in their lineup. It was I watched it. It was boring as hell to watch. Actually, Vegas probably Colorado almost probably won that game psychologically because Vegas should have really beat them more than that. That's the only thing I'll really say much about that game. It was really not a fun game to watch. It was sloppy. Uh, they the only thing Vegas did not take advantage of the fact that Colorado was probably going to not get their legs moving this game, that game. But the other game we really got to talk about for sure: Washington Capitals and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what
This was huge for my fantasy.
it was huge for your fantasy. It was terrible for my Washington ML here. Again,
Washington.
which is my mistake because I never should bet on a team that hadn't played in a week. It's much the same as what happened with Colorado here. However, you just got to keep on giving props to Winnipeg or to Pittsburgh for really not having what you should need on paper, but still winning games.
Yeah, this was the first game that they went up by 2 goals and then consequently ended up going up by 3 goals with the empty net in the whole season. They were talking about every game has been a 1 goal game for Pittsburgh. They finally were able to kind of come at somebody a little bit more. Probably did get aided by the fact that Washington did not play in a week, obviously, and you guys did have some action. So that obviously helps, but you still came out. They weren't the team to score the first goal. They had to rebound from Kuzi coming out and scoring the first goal. So they were able to do that. Rust had a heck of a game going in front of the net.
Yeah.
The second one should have been saved by Vanacek. He didn't get to the post quick enough. But he still had a nice play getting in front of the net on the second goal, and he squeaked it through, even though it should have been saved. Tanev was able to then do what Tanev does when he actually doesn't look lost, which is get in front of the net and actually score a good rebound goal. When he actually is focused in, he's a pretty decent skater and a pretty good player for your third shifting between your second needed for injury purposes line. You just don't want him overtaxed, and that's usually what happens in Pittsburgh because of what we talk lack of depth now on their roster. And then of course Gensel was Jake Gensel. I mean, Jake Gensel just keeps doing great things for Pittsburgh. And
Mm-hmm.
Crosby scored one of the nicer empty net goals because he got absolutely taken down and then just decided to shoot it from his knee anyway. I feel like I'm complimenting Cindy Crosby too much lately. I'm a Flyers fan complimenting this guy constantly lately. But anyway, he did really well again, and he continues to do well. But they just played their best game all season, in my opinion. They came out, played really well. They played solid, not the best. Yari played better. Still had a couple plays that he got lucky on, but he played
Yeah.
better. And Vanacek has showed that the wear and tear is adding up.
Yeah.
He's not supposed to be playing this much yet. I think that's all it is. I think he's still going to be a great platoon with Samsonov when he comes back in. He's not even
Oh
ready
yeah.
to come back up yet because he just got his ass handed to him by the Phantoms. But once he's ready to come back up, they'll be able to figure it out. So that's the thing there. They also have Anderson, and then Copley's pretty good in the AHL. I'm surprised since the Flyers are comfortable using Lyon against Colorado of all teams last year, and Boston in the past. They don't use him sometimes, but you have to figure it out there. I think they're overtaxing Vanacek, and they got to figure something out until Samsonov's ready.
Yeah, and
Don't know.
Pittsburgh's defense, I'll give it a little bit of a shout out to them. They didn't look too bad. I mean, it is a tired Washington Capitals, but CC put up 2 points.
Yeah, how'd that
CC
happen?
for Norris. Woo! I'll also give it props to Pierre Oliver Joseph, who has been playing there for the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is the guy that they picked up for Phil Kessel. Kind of been a guy that has uh, was going to turn out to be a good defenseman and then kind of had some setbacks. And now this year he's kind of stepping up into himself. 5 points in 9 games, plus minus a three. He's not looking too bad for the Pittsburgh Penguins so far, and I'm hoping he continues. They got a nice young plethora of defensemen with Marino and Oliver Joseph coming up into that squad now. So hopefully those guys do take charge alongside of Christopher Letang as well. But Yari just he definitely had some shots that he should have saved, some goals that shouldn't have went in the back of the net. And Vanasek as well. He's been playing so many games. It's been crazy. He's been huge for my fantasy team. It sucks that he's starting to lose some games now in the past recent couple games, but he's going to be a great guy to go alongside of Samsonov when he comes back into the lineup for the Washington Capitals and he starts. You're right. He definitely for the Lehigh Valley. They absolutely whooped him in that game. Does not look in the proper shape. And Brian Rust as well for the Pittsburgh Penguins looking absolutely great in that game as well. And we'll have to see if Pittsburgh will be able to continue that momentum moving forward. Um, this big with Berkey and Hexall, what are they going to do after the next couple of games and see if they're going to maybe tweak some stuff there in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, what I was saying before the weekend is I think Sullivan's a fantastic coach. Uh,
Yeah.
they were talking about him possibly. He's been in the conversation for Jack Adams for a while now, and I'm sure he'll get one. He sure deserves one. Kind of hard to get one when you have Crosby on your lineup, but in your
Yeah,
lineup like that just takes the slant off of it. But really, this is a guy that has had teams that have been injured extensively the last couple of years, and they just keep on going. And just a good point. Now, I don't know if you can just hand this over to Sullivan, but he certainly, I imagine, is part of it. Probably the first time in 2 years I've ever said Matheson had a good game.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Matheson also had a good game. I think their defensive core actually had one of the better games this year. You could almost give praise to every one of those defensemen. In that night, you could even give a little bit of praise to CC. The way that he was generating some offensive opportunities by shooting it on the net lightly, not being a total doofus we've been seeing. There's been a lot of players getting hit in the head this year. Or aren't you coached to shoot the puck low and not like skyrocket and try to nail your buddy's head? Like I've been seeing that so much in the NHL where players have been getting nailed in the head. And as a defenseman, you were taught in like pee-wee tier hockey that hey, when you shoot the puck from the point, don't try to kill one of your teammates. Shoot it alongside of the ice, and CC was perfectly doing that in that game against the Capitals. I think it was the goal that set up Tanev for one of the goals, and I think even Getzel for one of the goals as well. But just you got to keep that puck down low. You can't be trying to kill some of your teammates. I think it was Paul Byron that got nailed in the head when the Canadians were playing when Sherratt took an absolute clap bomb from the point, or Edmondson. And keep the puck down low when you're a defenseman. It'll generate more points and generate more opportunities for your offensive core.
Uh,
yeah, I agree with that. I will say, because we brought up Olivier Joseph, his brother's doing pretty good in Tampa Bay as well. Matthew, the
Yeah.
Joseph family's definitely building a good name for themselves this far in their careers.
yeah. As far as the shooting high and all off, I think there's a mixed message going on right now because goaltenders now have become ever since, especially like starting off with Patrick Waugh, but I think Patrick Waugh is the not necessarily the innovator, but the perfecter of the butterfly play down low system that we see predominantly still today. a lot and covering the lower part of the net. So what coaches have started to do is say, you gotta start putting it high, and it's getting in the minds of defensemen as they shoot, which unfortunately it's probably what you have to do to score, but it's also something you can't do, or like you said, you're going to kill somebody.
Well, you gotta pick an opportune time. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm just gonna shoot it blindly and let it just skyrocket. Like,
Yeah, that's
you
true.
can't
Yeah.
do that. Like those are the big plays. Like, sometimes you just gotta read it as a defenseman. You gotta read it like what CC did. He read it perfectly. He knew that, okay, I could slide this across the ice. There's a lot of people in front of the goalie. The goalie's probably not going to be able to see this shot anyways. Get it to my teammate. Let my teammate shoot it. And yeah, sometimes defensemen have great accuracy and you're a perfect shooter. But sometimes, like a Joel Edmondson, a defensive defenseman who has no accuracy at all, and it's just practically throwing it into the wind and seeing where it goes, is definitely not always the best bet. It just depends on the situation, I guess. If goalies have gotten great under butterfly, maybe try to get it to your forward to shoot it high. We're always going to have to adapt, and I think that's just always going to be a thing with hockey and with any sport. You have to adapt and kind of come to the plays. So it's just, I guess it's just dependent on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that, at one time when you were talking about, like, back when I was in my day, that was always the message: shoot low, shoot low, shoot low
Hmm.
from the point. Always. If you shot high, you get like crap for it, right? It was never. You always shot low, shot low, shot low, because
Yeah.
it wasn't necessarily to save the other team. It was also just, it was easier to tip, right? If you shoot high, how are you going to tip it? Because you're going to get a high sticking
Yeah.
penalty. Not a penalty, but it's going to be knocked down with a high stick. It's not going to count, and all of that sort of thing. So it was actually better. But goaltenders never didn't play that way, and now they sort of changed the game a little bit, and there's got to be an adaptation. But which I think it's just psychologically the puck's going higher now because they're not stressing it like they were before. It was like
Yeah.
so much before.
Well, the big thing is even if you're in front, like if you're like Pavelski and some others, he can deflect it from the crossbar down. But most guys, when you want to get a deflection, you don't want the thing to be at your shoulder, so you have to come up here
Yeah,
and somehow deflect it down when you're standing in front of the net. You
yeah,
would prefer it, like Payton said, to be like basically like here down, so it's easier to deflect it. You're not like, oh my gosh, and have to
yeah,
like strain your
Hmm.
shoulder just to deflect a puck.
yeah.
So I think what you guys are saying is completely true. Like even when I play roller hockey, I still do that. I make sure I suck at it, but I try to do it. Make sure that the shot's low from the point, because I don't want to kill somebody. And I've almost got killed in front of the net playing roller hockey because the ball is hard as a rock. So I mean, you definitely don't want those shot at your face. So. You definitely would prefer if people shoot it low, whether it's ice hockey or roller hockey, especially with those roller hockey balls that could literally kill somebody.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. It's like I said, it's a different game, but there's an adoption. Some guys just can't do it and try to do it. I think part of it might have to do with some guys thinking they can do more than they can. There are guys that can pick that top corner, like Heiskanen, maybe Cam
Hmm.
Fowler. But those guys also, when you mentioned like Heiskanen, Cam Fowler, Giordano, they know how to place the
Weber
puck.
in his back, yeah.
Well,
Weber could do
Weber
it.
Weber can just
Back in the
absolutely
yeah.
freaking pound it, where people go diving the other direction if he's going to slap. He's insane.
Yeah.
But guys like Giordano, he never really had a huge slap shot. Very seldom did he use it. And Cam Fowler, they just know how to place it like what Peyton's saying, perfect, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what goal scoring is about. Placement. You don't always have to have the sexiest shot. You just have to have the nice accuracy. And if you
Yeah,
can place it right, you're going to score. It's the same as football. Look at Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning did not have great arm strength, but he's
Yeah.
one of the best all-time quarterbacks in the Hall of Famer because he knew how to place it. It's the same in hockey. If you can be a great goal scorer, Chris Kreider's a good goal scorer. I wouldn't say he has one of the best shots in the history of the NHL. He's just pretty good at figuring out where to shoot the puck. He has a solid shot, but I wouldn't say he's a Toffoli by any stretch. So like, it's all about placement and figuring out where to put it.
Yeah, he just
Yeah.
gets in the right places and is able to
Exactly.
do it. But those kind of defensemen, yeah. My thinking is there's more teams in the league now. I think there's more defensemen that are utilized for that role that probably shouldn't. And the puck
Mm-hmm.
lofts up off their stick a little more than it used to. They think that they can go top, but they can't, and they don't know the situations when they can, but they try it anyways. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's why maybe you're seeing it happen more now because of that as well. But you're right. There has been a lot of stuff to the face lately. It's not just pucks, but period. I find.
There has been punches, pucks,
I've enjoyed the
sticks.
fighting. The fighting is great. I like.
Oh, then the Lemieux versus Frederick fight was an absolute
Yeah, it was.
show, man. Holy crow! Just Lemieux just absolutely fiended Frederick. I
Yeah,
I love that one. That was a good tilt between the
Lion A,
two.
man. I
Oh, and
love
that
that.
too.
I
Yeah, Line A
He
love.
fought
got
him. That was
knocked out though.
yeah, that was surprising. Line A decided to drop him, and he did get that. But I mean, it's just the wherewithal when your team needs momentum. It's like, wait a minute, Patrick Liney's fighting. What the heck is going on? Like
Well,
that's when you know your team's going to pick up their ante because Patrick Liney don't fight. That was like when Jeff Carter would fight for the fight. Be like, wait, what? Like, and then the whole team would get going because they'd be like, wait, Jeff just fought somebody. Did you guys see that? Jeff just fought somebody. Like, it's
well,
pretty much the same thing with Line.
and this is what I said when Lion A went from winning. Like I just did in my last video, on my picks video that I did. I talked about Winnipeg, and I'm like, I'm suspect that a guy like Lion A can't make it in your team for whatever reason. I'm suspect of that team. I'm suspect of that team now moving forward, because I heard a lot of people talking crap about Lion A and stuff. I don't know where it came from. I honestly love the guy, and he showed why I loved him right there. Like that is come to a new organization. You get benched for saying something to a coach. You handle it and say, you know what, this is good. I'm glad they did that. Then the next game you go out and drop them, and you're lying. Oh, I just love it. I love it. And
I
I
think
think
the reason why people hate him is just like all the reports last year about him, like uh, big gamer and him kind of slack. And people need to give him a little bit more slack. It's a goal scorer and he's young. Goal scorers, I think, find it the hardest, especially like you look at Ovi, right? Like not every year Ovi's going to go out there and put 50 points or 50 goals, I mean, right? We've seen it before where he's only scored 30 goals and he's struggled. And the media bashes those people hard, and they were bashing Line pretty hard there lately. And Liney's an overall great player. I've always loved Liney ever since he got drafted there to Winnipeg. I thought he was a good player. He was underutilized, and
big
I
time.
think the way that they're handling him in there in Columbus is a good thing. And I think it's going to continue. I think Liney is feeling more comfortable there in Columbus, and he feels like he could get more of an opportunity out of that team as well. And if he feels like he's going to get more of an opportunity, he's more likely going to be staying there in Columbus
Yeah,
for the future haul.
I think it'd be
Yep.
very good for his career to stay there because I think him and Torts are a perfect combination. To tell you
And
the
him
honest
and
truth.
Roslovich already have good chemistry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Roslovich ain't going anywhere. He's from Ohio. So as long as they want to keep him around, he's staying around.
Yeah,
And he's
Roslovich,
doing great.
he's
Yeah.
doing great. I got Carolina to win tonight, but that's only because Carolina is playing so well. I'm a little suspect of that pick. I have it on, like, you know, don't put too much on it, but um, I think Columbus is going to really turn things around. I think they're going
Oh,
to be.
Arizona just went up 1-0.
I know, I
Carmen
saw that.
Garland got a goal there.
You just saw it now?
Oh, Keller. There we go.
No, I didn't see just now. I
Oh,
just
okay.
tuned in and I just seen it
Yeah,
go.
Keller with
I
the
just,
top hand corner. That guy's got quite the shot, eh? If he could,
he does.
he's only 22. I've heard, oh, they should trade Keller. I'm like, what are you talking about? You don't
Oh,
trade a shot
it's
like
because
that. It's just like you don't trade
Arizona
Lion
needs to
A.
play patient. Arizona needs to play patient with their team. They got a good team for the future. They just gotta play patient. I think that's the best thing that Armstrong can do right now for the Arizona club is just keep playing patient with that team and to keep playing smart with them because Arizona's future, they got a good future. Yeah, they lost a couple picks because John Chayka was kind of a douche canoe, but uh, otherwise,
I love that. Douche canoe. Oh, I've never heard that before. I love it. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Continue.
we're making a new
I'm
segment.
just
It's
gonna
gonna be the
use
douche
that
canoe
someday.
segment.
Don't be a douche canoe. When I start having my swag, I'm gonna. That's the Pearlo Wisdom Show. Don't be a douche canoe. I love it. Okay, yeah, but you're right. He was. It seems apparent he was quite the D wad right there, for sure.
And he said he was like gonna use analytics, and then he never used analytics. The pickups that he did was not analytically like a Jomerson. A lot of the players that they picked up over that time was actually really him not using analytics. It was just him taking Hail Marys
Except
and
for
hoping that
Demers. Demers had good Corsi numbers, but
mhm,
I just think his
Demers is pretty
analytics were
good.
not good. He was taking guys strictly on Corsi and puck possession, but he
Hmm.
was missing out a lot of analytics there with this. Don't you agree?
Yeah, well, he like tried to pick up Golchenyuk and try to like revitalize his career, and then trade him off to Pittsburgh, and then like, oh yeah, here's Phil Kessel. Phil Kessel was not analytics. If you
No.
were an analytic GM, you would not make that move, and you would not trade away Max Domi in the first place. If you were to go and trade for Golchenyuk, you would do a different move if you were an analytic GM. The moves that Chayka did was not very smart for the Coyotes and kind of put them in the hole that they are in now, which I mean doesn't look like it's too bad of a team. I think they definitely need that kind of shift in the management. I felt like it definitely wasn't a very a place where Talkett and Chayka really enjoyed each other. I think Armstrong is just a way better GM there for Arizona. It fits that market perfectly.
Well, that's the odd thing because they brought in Shaker, who was friends with the ownership, and then he sucked. Like that. That's why it didn't make any sense. He was boys with the people that ended up buying the team, and then he sucked. Had no chemistry with them even, let alone the coach. Like that's what didn't. That's when you goes to show you have something wrong with the way you do things. If the people that brought you in because they knew you all of a sudden don't like you anymore, and then Rick Tockett, like you said, seemed to never really enjoy him, that means you're doing something wrong, and you got to figure it out if you want another job
Yeah.
after your suspension's over.
Yeah, doesn't it seem like to me that this is a guy that kind of talked his way into everything and had people convinced that he was something
He
that he
had
was
a
not? He's like
he had a video.
he's like that cheesy salesman that ends up another guy that we know very well that seems a lot like him was Shirelli.
I think Chayka was that guy that played NHL 20 or NHL like EA Sports way too much on franchise mode and believed he could be a GM, and he made Arizona Coyotes the perfect team in franchise mode, and then decided that hey, I might as well become a GM myself.
But the
He
thing
goes
is
to Arizona.
he had to talk his way into that. He seems like a
He
guy
did.
that
I
talked
think he
his way
did.
into everything.
He must have talked his way into it because he was probably buddies with the ownership. He's like, "Hey, I'm a good GM. I know analytics. I know how to do this thing." And it was his
God,
first ever. Wasn't his first ever job as an NHL, like just in general. He did fitness testing when it wasn't supposed to be. It was illegal for him. He was not supposed to do what he was doing. He sacrificed the Arizona Coyotes' future with losing a first round draft pick and a second round draft pick. It was a horrible move by Arizona, and John Chayka was an imposter of a GM. He was not supposed to be there.
No, I'm watching watching this Arizona. I've watched a lot of Arizona. Quite simply, they're extremely well coached. They have almost a robotic system that Rick Tocchet has, and their pushback is absolutely fantastic. Uh,
I
they
feel like they just enjoy hockey much more as well.
they just enjoy what they're doing. It doesn't look like they're playing to win a game. It looks like they're playing to win the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's what they gotta do.
that's really how you win games is you're winning moments, right?
Yeah, and that's what you got to do with Arizona. Like you gotta play it patient. Like like you're a decent team out there, and you're young. You're still improving. So if you just go out there, have some fun. I mean, this year it's a shortened season. If you don't make it into the playoffs, you don't make it into the playoffs. If you do, then that's great. Go for it then. Try to push for the Stanley Cup. But if not, you're going to be clearing up a bunch of cap space anyways. That Jalmerson's going to be coming off the books. You're going to be able to slowly improve this team here in Arizona, and it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah. You're a big Rick Tocchet guy, right, Joe?
Yeah, yeah, that's why I talked him up when we talked about Arizona. I said the biggest reason they're playing well is because of Taka. He pushes
Yeah.
everything, and the fact that Connor Garland's a rookie that wasn't talked about enough while coming up, and then got talked about very quickly.
Oh,
Keller definitely has the massive potential we talked about. He should not be traded. And then Dvorak is a guy that we were saying about a couple years ago. Do not trade this guy. He seems to
yeah.
have more in the tank,
Yep.
and that worked out well. So if they trade Keller, they're absolutely stupid because you have an example A on your own team. The guy that you
Mhm.
were patient with and then flourishing now. So if you trade Keller, that just goes against your own motto. So yeah, you should definitely keep Keller.
Yeah. Keller just got a penalty, by the way. Um,
Well, you know.
yeah, that's going to be one of the most interesting things to see with Arizona is you mentioned that Goligoski, Chalmerson, and Demers, I believe, and maybe even more, are coming off the books next year. I'm going to really find it interesting to see what kind of a palette is formed with this team, with those guys coming off the books and a little bit more cap space to work with.
Yeah, you
Um,
got Goligoski, Jalmerson, Demers, Orstrel, and Antti Ranta coming off the books there and then you also have Kessel. A year after that, he'll be coming off the books for you as well.
well,
So,
that'll be huge. Yeah. What was
It
they?
would be
but
wise.
also to know, um,
Osterley keep. I say Osterley keep.
yeah. I think I think the biggest problem going into next year with Arizona is cap because they're already tight against the cap. They're probably spending way too much money than what they have this year, and they're probably going to lose a lot of money going through this year as well, especially since there's no fans in the arena. There's no tickets. It's basically nothing is going to go good for Arizona. But I know NHL is splitting the profits, but there's still going to be a profit loss there for Arizona. We'll see like what is going to be their internal cap going into the next year and if they're going to be able to bring in too many players. They might have to do what Florida did and just bring in like players like Weinberg and Verhage and just fill it with a bunch of players that are maybes that could turn out to be good and just kind of gamble is what Arizona might have to do if they do
Well,
go.
I'll tell you what I
Yeah.
would want to do right off the get go. If I'm going to rebuild right now, sort of build around a defenseman right now, I'd see if I could get Hamilton out of Carolina. I mean, he's going
I
to be
wouldn't.
good. He's going to be good for the next 7 years.
Yeah, without a doubt. But I mean, you got Ekman Larson and Chichurin. You would definitely
Chikrin,
need a
yeah.
right-handed.
If yeah, oh yeah,
I
is he
mean,
not right-handed? Hamilton's a
no, they're
lefty.
both left-handed. They're both left-handed.
Hamilton's lefty.
Oh,
No,
Hamilton's
Dougie's right.
right-handed.
Hamilton's
Dougie's
Hamilton's
right-handed.
right-handed.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that would be I would be a guy I'd be going out for, but I think Hamilton will probably sign him up. I think he or Carolina.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think Carolina will sign him, but they have been known to be cheap. But for him, he seems to have worked out well there. If that's not the case, I don't know. I'd have to look. It's just
I
gonna be
think
very
the
interesting because you're gonna see which direction they're gonna go by how they fill those spots.
well, if I was advising Armstrong, I would say don't do anything now. Wait to see if we keep competing. Don't trade Antti Ranta. If we start falling off, you should see if you can get someone back on because you're likely not keeping him past this year. There's been rumors of him getting traded,
Oh,
so it seems like
I can't see.
you probably wouldn't keep him past.
Ranta would have to give up too
So and
much
then
money to stay there. I think he's gone no matter what. I think you
yeah,
have to get
exactly.
something
So
for him.
you should trade him to get something, unless if you're doing really well and you think you're the surprise team, you might want to have him as your backup so you don't just have Kemper running into a ground. But you then also have a team that, like Payton and everyone else has been saying, that's still trying to figure it out. Having guys come in, you have guys in the minors that aren't up yet, that are guys that are probably going to be part of the NHL core going forward. I think it's just going to take a little bit of time. The second guy I would say next year, you mentioned him already too, If Kessel keeps doing well, there's no need to keep him to the end of his contract, unless if
No,
you're doing that good at that time. If you're
no,
that good of a surprise team, there's no need to keep him to the end of his contract.
yeah.
If not, you could try this year. I wouldn't trade him this year with how they are now, and there's not an extended amount of time until you have to make that decision, especially if you're trading to Canada. But then if you do next year when everything's probably a little bit more normal, hopefully, that will be a time that I think would be good if he gets off to a hot start again, reach out to people and say, what assets would you give us with Phil Kessel? Because you can never have enough draft picks when you're trying to retool your roster and build around people. So no matter if
Mm-hmm.
the third, fourth, or whatever round picks, you can never have enough of them, especially if you can start drafting well with Armstrong compared to Shika. So
Especially with the way how the Shaker lost all their draft picks. I don't know who's going to take
exactly,
Phil
that could have
Kessel
been
at his stage at this
doofus.
stage of his
Yeah,
career, though. I don't know who's going to take, and I'm pretty sure he still has the NTC, no trade clause. So you're really not getting
Yep.
much. You're not really getting. You might as well just have Kessel
It
hang around
actually
there
has a
until
no
he's
movement
gone.
clause. Actually has a
He's
no movement and no trade clause
Yeah, he's had that for a long time, and he's still got
since the
moved.
start of
But
his contract.
yeah, and the big reason why he went there was because Taka was there. He turned down
that makes
Minnesota.
sense.
He turned down Minnesota. Remember, he could have been in
Good thing he
Minnesota
didn't go
right now.
to. Good thing he didn't. Good thing he didn't go to Minnesota. That would have been
Yeah,
horrible.
Minnesota.
that was for what's his name, Zucker,
Yeah.
and they ended up
Oh,
getting Zucker anyways.
jeez.
They ended up getting Zucker anyways. But
That was
yeah,
a win for Minnesota.
hard for him to get to the fishing hole in winter in Minnesota. I imagine it's part of the reason why he said no to that. But the big reason why
He's played in Toronto.
the big reason why he said no to that is that he didn't think they were competitive enough. But he went to Arizona. So
But he probably believed in Rick Tocchet. He's
yeah,
like, okay, well, you got a lot of young pieces here. Probably Rick Tocchet will be able to probably, fix this team up pretty good, and maybe I have a chance here. But with last year, the way that it went for them, it didn't go too well, especially goal scoring wise there for Phil Kessel. And that's just the way that Arizona is. They're not a goal scoring team. They're a defensive structured team. And if Phil Kessel could get a little bit of goals, which is what he's been doing this year, he's been able to give a little bit of more point production, especially just that whole Arizona team has been able to score a little bit of more goals. So if you could get some more point production out of Kessel, I think the best time to trade him would be now. Maybe even retain him a little bit, retain an extra million, so it's only 5.8 million that the next team has to pay him. So maybe that's what they need to do. But I think Arizona, honestly, if they keep playing the way that they play, I mean, you could definitely be passing the Anaheim Ducks pretty easily. And
yeah.
you
Yeah.
could be in a playoff spot and playing. I mean, you might have to play against the Vegas Golden Knights in the first round, but hey, you get more playoff experience for a lot of your younger players.
Yeah, that's the problem with Arizona. And you know what? It's if Rick Tocchet is almost the problem. It's they're in that too good to be not a playoff team or just barely make the playoffs, but not good enough to win a cup situation where you keep on getting middle round draft picks like Minnesota's been for the last 7 years. The difference, though, being I don't think Arizona needs as much talent to win with Tocchet there.
Yeah.
That's the
Although
main thing,
this
though.
year you want to make the playoffs because you don't have your first. So
Oh
you would
yeah, for
prefer to
sure.
screw over the other team that has your first.
Yeah,
So that's also there's also that
but you also
you would have
can't give up draft picks to get better because you need your. And I
see how
was
many other people can entertain you on Arizona or entertain you. Where did I get
entertain
entertain?
you with Arizona.
Entertain you with Arizona. Yeah.
Not only that, that means we'll be talking about your team because we talk about all teams. We don't just talk about one team, any team here, or just the best teams or whatever. This isn't all. We talk about every team here, and we're going to be. We talk about every sports because we are
Mm-hmm.
steelflyers.com, the all sports network that is growing and growing and growing. We got some announcements coming up with some pretty cool guests from what we heard in our meeting
Well,
today.
one I can say is my show's kicking off tomorrow, 8 to 10, for the overall Sports Fanatic News Sportscast. That's an announcement I'm allowed to make. So,
Yes, there we
yeah,
go. So we're going to
Mm-hmm.
be, what is it, 8 to 10 a.m.
eight PM.
8 to 10 p.m. Eastern time.
Eastern time. Yes. Yeah.
Yes, his premiere show, boys and girls. We will all be there, won't we? Yes, cancel all your
Oh
plans.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's going to be absolutely fantastic. Peyton, you've been going to school, but we got to have you because he's honing his craft so he can bring the best that he can be. But right now you got a week
Mm-hmm.
off, don't you?
Yeah, I have a week off of school, so just sitting back, relaxing, making YouTube videos, doing some lives. I will be doing one tonight on the Oilers versus Jets game. I'll be doing play-by-play on Twitch, on Payton on the radio up on there. So that should be a lot of fun. Hopefully the Oilers win tonight and get another big W.
I hope they win tonight because I got them in a parlay, I think. Yeah, I hope they win. And I'm an Oilers fan. Don't forget that. Philadelphia. So I want them to win for every reason
I'll
possible.
go with the trend because Dre's my favorite player, not on the Flyers. So there you go. Win it.
Dre is your favorite. Yeah, I can see why.
Where's my case? Hold on. Let me see my. Here we go. Hold up.
Do you think that there's we got to get going here,
Oh,
but I want to ask a question. Do you think there's going to be some debate whether Dre is better than McDavid when the career is over?
no,
No?
no, I don't see it. I think McDavid's
Well, put it
he's
this way: who has a better
better
team
than
the
Drysdale.
defensive award?
It's just
It depends who.
it's just like saying who's better, Crosby or Malkin. People will always say Crosby in the end, and that will be the same for Drysdale. Drysdale is a great player, but I don't think he'll ever. He's just not McDavid. McDavid's just on a whole nother level. He's up there with Crosby